Rua Takayashiki looks on with a sadistic expression, demanding to be entertained and mocking Kazuma's frustration. She coldly declares that even being childhood friends with him is bad enough. As Kazuma stands there with a hollow gaze, he feels something inside him finally snap. Rua Takayashiki is far from an ordinary girl, a super popular idol and the granddaughter of the chairman of the massive Teikai Group, a corporation that controls much of Japan. Her wealth and power are incomparable to ordinary people to the world. She is a picture-perfect princess. In stark contrast to Rua's brilliance, Kazuma Suzuki describes himself as a gloomy social outcast with no friends. The only thing that sets him apart from the ordinary is his childhood connection to the illustrious Rua Takayashiki. But that was the reality of their relationship. Kazuma admits that he has always lived in Rua's shadow, existing as a mere footnote to her overwhelming brilliance and social status. Gazing out the window at the other students, Kazuma admits that he doesn't need to be special like Rua. All he truly wants is to be normal, to have friends, and perhaps one day find a girlfriend. Kazuma remembers a moment when he actually opened up to Rua about his simple wishes. But her response was far from what he had hoped for. Rua laughs mockingly at Kazuma, calling him stupid and a social outcast who needs to know his place. She cruelly tells him that his only worth is being the childhood friend of the great Rua, claiming that this single connection has used up all the good fortune in his life. Her words become a relentless barrage of insults, commanding him to know his limits and stay in his lane based on his birth. As the spring of his first year of high school arrives, Kazuma still yearns for a normal life, but the cruel words Rua has spoken since childhood continue to weigh on him like a curse. This oppressive relationship is mirrored in his mind, as he is bound in chains at Rua's feet. Suddenly, his phone beeps with a message from Rua, casually demanding that he meet her at the station at 3 p.m. to join her and some others for karaoke. Rua continues to message Kazuma, mockingly reminding him of his desire for friends and a girlfriend. She claims that the best way to achieve this is by joining her elite group, urging him to have the courage to change. As he reads, Kazuma thinks of Aayacha Hiragi, a flashy Aayacha Hiragi he has never even spoken to, and wonders why Rua is doing this. For a brief moment, he allows himself to believe that this could actually be his chance to change. Determined to change, Kazuma dresses up as best as he can and gathers his courage to visit a hair salon. As he opens the door to the shop, he resolves to transform himself into a new version of who he is. Kazuma steps into the room, hoping for a fresh start, but he is immediately greeted by a wave of derisive laughter. His classmates mock him openly, finding his presence and his new haircut absolutely pathetic. Standing in silence, Kazuma realizes that the entire gathering was just a setup to humiliate him. His Ari jeer at his new haircut and outfit, with Rua Takayashiki mockingly telling them not to laugh while laughing herself. She then approaches him with a fake tone of concern, asking what is wrong. Broken by the mockery, Kazuma asks Rua if he did something wrong to deserve this treatment. Rua responds with a sadistic grin, betting that he will soon start bawling. She laughs at his misery, demanding that he entertain her by showing how pathetic he looks when frustrated, and finally delivers the crushing blow. He is treated this way, simply because he is her slave. With a sadistic grin, Rua reveals the cold truth, telling Kazuma that having him as a childhood friend was simply awful. As the words sink in, Kazuma's eyes widen in shock, and he feels a sudden, definitive snap within his heart, the sound of their long-standing bond finally shattering. With a cold and vacant gaze, Suzuki Kazuma finally stands his ground. He looks Rua Takayashiki in the eye and declares that their friendship ends here. Rua, maintaining her haughty demeanor, simply agrees, officially sealing the end of their long-standing bond. Rua is completely blindsided, her cold facade crumbling into sheer confusion and anger. She demands to know who he thinks he is, unable to process his sudden change in attitude. However, Kazuma stands his ground, calmly reminding her that she was the one who claimed to hate their bond. Outraged by his sudden defiance, Rua Takayashiki screams that he has no right to hate her, insisting that only she holds the power to dictate their feelings. Kazuma, however, remains unfazed, silently lamenting the twisted reality where someone as toxic as Rua is idolized by everyone. With a final, firm statement, Suzuki Kazuma turns his back on Rua Takayashiki and walks away without left in a state of shock. Rua can only stare as Aayacha, and their Ari try to reassure her that he is nothing more than a loser. Struggling to maintain her composure, Rua dismisses his sudden change in behavior as merely a lame attempt to act cool. As Suzuki Kazuma continues to walk away without looking back, Rua Takayashiki can no longer maintain her composure. In a moment of desperation, she calls out to him, pleading for him to wait. As the silence follows the confrontation, it is revealed that the table has been shattered, leaving a stack of cash and a microphone resting on the broken surface. The surrounding Ari are left in shock, staring at the wreckage of the table. Some wonder if Kazuma was the one responsible for the damage, while others frantically insist that it must have already been broken. claiming it would be inhuman to break such a table with bare hands. Seeking validation for their denial, one of the Ari turns to Rua Takayashiki, asking if she agrees that it was impossible. However, Rua is completely shaken, barely managing to utter a fragmented response as she remains lost in shock. As the confusion over the shattered table persists, Rua Takayashiki finally snaps, her face flushed with emotion. She screams that she will never forgive Suzuki Kazuma for ending their friendship, while Kazuma simply lets out a short, indifferent sound. Walking away, Suzuki Kazuma feels strangely refreshed, noticing that the scenery around him looks brighter than usual. As he reflects on his past, he wonders why he spent so much time taking orders from Rua Takayashiki, concluding that he would rather spend his high school life alone than continue to grovel before that beast in human clothing. With a look of determination in his eyes, Suzuki Kazuma resolves that from this moment forward, things will be different. Standing in the middle of the street under a brilliant sky, Suzuki Kazuma feels the weight of years of submission lift from his shoulders. He declares to himself that he no longer has to live as her shadow is finally free. That night, the scene shifts to the imposing Teikai Academy. Inside his grand office, Takayashiki Taizo, the powerful chairman of the Teikai group and headmaster of the academy, is working. His stern expression vanishes, replaced by a warm smile as his granddaughter, Rua Takayashiki, arrives to see him. Rua bursts into a fit of complaints, telling her grandfather and her cousin, Takayashiki Sakura, about how mean Kazuma was today. She reveals with distress that he actually wanted to end their friendship, leaving her grandfather stunned. Meanwhile, Sakura listens calmly, wondering if Kazuma was simply bored. Frustrated, Rua Takayashiki insists that it's true, venting about how that jerk Kazuma has never dared to stand up to her until now. Meanwhile, Takayashiki Sakura looks on with curiosity, wondering about the sudden change in Kazukun's attitude. Takayashiki Sakura asks Rua if she had said something terrible to Kazuma. Panicking, Rua denies it, but then accidentally reveals the extent of her cruelty by claiming she only called him her slave, and told him that having him as a childhood friend was awful. Startled by the reaction, Rua protests, but Takayashiki Taizo firmly tells her that it is only natural for Kazuma to be angry after hearing such things. Meanwhile, Takayashiki Sakura thoughtfully adds that Rua's words were indeed quite terrible. Flustered and defensive, Rua insists that she wasn't being serious and was only teasing Kazuma. She complains to her grandfather and Sakura that it's weird for Kazuma to suddenly want friends and a girlfriend in high school, but Sakura simply finds such a desire to be perfectly normal, much to Rua's frustration. Rua becomes increasingly dramatic, proclaiming that as the world's cutest princess, she is all Kazuma needs. She dismisses her oppressive behavior as mere teasing, insisting that it's ridiculous for him to seek other relationships when she understands him better than anyone else in the world. Rua reaches a fever pitch of emotion, shouting that she loves him. Seeing his granddaughter's passion, Takayashiki Taizo's doting nature takes over and he suddenly declares that Kazuma is indeed in the wrong, while Sakura looks on with amusement. When Sakura suggests that Rua should be the one to make amends, Rua immediately shuts her down with a loud no way. Blushing and desperate, she turns to Sakura, demanding that as Kazuma's mentor, she must fix the situation. Rua insists that Sakura should force Kazuma to apologize to her and confess his love with a kiss. Takayashiki Sakura is completely speechless, hiding her face behind her fan as she processes Rua's absurd request. She can only conclude that asking for a kiss is simply too much. Takayashiki Sakura asks her great-uncle if he intends for Suzuki Kazuma to become Rua's husband. Takayashiki Taizo confirms this, explaining that it is the reason he appointed Sakura as Kazuma's mentor to train him in combat and leadership, noting that Kazuma possesses a rare talent. Sakura reflects on this, agreeing that she has never seen anyone quite like him. Takayashiki Sakura reveals the shocking truth about Suzuki Kazuma. Since elementary school, he deliberately maintained average grades just to stay as Rua's shadow, despite possessing a talent that could shake the entire world if he ever got serious. Furthermore, Sakura notes that he is credibly popular with girls, though he remains completely oblivious to his own charm. Convinced by Kazuma's hidden capabilities, Takayashiki Taizo declares that he is worthy of becoming the heir to the Teikai group. Rua huffs with pride, possessively asserting that Kazuma belongs to her, leaving Takayashiki Sakura speechless at the absurdity of the situation. As the night falls over the grand estate, Takayashiki Sakura reflects on the shift in dynamics. She realizes that with the bond between Suzuki, Kazuma, and Rua Takayashiki severed, Kazuma is no longer bound to suppress his genius, whether in sports, academics, or romance. His true potential is about to be unleashed, and Sakura suspects that things are about to get very complicated. The next morning, Suzuki Kazuma returns to school, only to find that the social fallout from his split with Rua has already taken effect. His desk has been removed and replaced by a sign that reads, "No seat for you, lol," while his Eri mock him for daring to defy Princess Rua. Unfazed by the hostility, Kazuma simply observes the scene, realizing exactly how things stand now. Looking at the situation, Kazuma finally sees things clearly. He realized that his childhood friend, the wealthy heiress and popular idolist, truly the worst kind of person there is. Facing the humiliation in the classroom, Suzuki Kazuma weighs his choices. He notes that most students would either quietly put the furniture back and endure the treatment or seek help from the staff room. However, Kazuma dismisses both options, determined to handle the situation differently because of the nature of Teikai Academy. Teikai Academy is known to the public as the Sclass Academy, a prestigious institution dedicated to cultivating the world's best talents in academics, sports, and entertainment. However, this pursuit of excellence has fostered a brutal caste system. Those with outstanding abilities are hailed as the upper class, while ordinary students are relegated to the lower class. This hierarchy, whether subtle or blatant, is what truly controls the school. Suzuki Kazuma contemplates the reality of his situation. At the top of the school's hierarchy is Rua Takayashiki, the influential Princess Rua, whose power is cemented by her grandfather, the headmaster. Looking at his overturned desk, Kazuma considers his options, but quickly dismisses the idea of seeking help from the staff, knowing that even the teachers are subservient to Rua's will. Suzuki Kazuma rejects the idea of submitting or complaining. Since he has already decided to live independently, he chooses a third option. He takes a pen and writes a message directly onto the mocking sign on his desk, stating that he will study by himself as an order from Rua Takayashiki, effectively using her own influence to secure his position. The other students are stunned by Kazuma's audacity. They whisper among themselves in disbelief, wondering if such a move is even allowed and questioning how he could possibly not fear the power of Princess Rua. Now then, in that case, Suzuki Kazuma thinks to himself that it would be troublesome if someone found him. Wanting to go somewhere out of sight, he searches the area until he discovers a secluded spot. This place, he notes, having found the perfect place to hide. Suzuki Kazuma arrives at the underground library, a hidden sanctuary that remains unknown to almost every student and teacher. Having learned of its existence from a former library committee member, he considers it the perfect secret hideout to kill time during his classes. As he unlocks the door, he reflects on his new reality since he has defied Rua. He believes that making friends or finding a girlfriend is now an impossible dream. All he desires now is to live a quiet, normal life in solitude. Just as Suzuki Kazuma settles into his new sanctuary, he is shocked to find he isn't alone. He comes face to face with a short-haired girl caught in a compromising state, leaving both of them stunned. Startled and completely embarrassed, Yuri lets out a piercing scream that echoes across the school. At this moment, Kazuma still has no idea who this girl is. Yuri stares at Suzuki Kazuma in utter shock, her cheeks burning with embarrassment as she is caught off guard in her secret sanctuary. As he stands there bewildered, Suzuki Kazuma realizes that his attempt to live a normal life is already proving to be impossible. He seems destined to be entangled with girls who are anything but ordinary. The scene captures the sheer awkwardness of the moment, with Yuri trembling in her state of undress and Kazuma frozen in shock at the doorway. These are the days that could never be called peaceful. Meanwhile, Rua Takayashiki sits smugly in her classroom, convinced that Kazumpa's defiance is only temporary and that he will soon come crawling back to apologize to her. While she waits for Kazuma to crawl back to her, Rua maintains her dazzling public persona. She appears in a YouTube video, energetically greeting her viewers as everyone's favorite idol, Ruaheim. In her video, Ruaheim announces today's theme, things that have totally ticked her off recently. She begins by mentioning a recent karaoke outing with some girls from her class, emphasizing that it was only girls because she finds boys scary. Rua continues her dramatic rant to her viewers, complaining about someone who acted like a total buzzkill during the karaoke trip, sitting grumpily the whole time before suddenly leaving and completely killing the vibe. Rua continues her broadcast, calling her fans her loyal subjects and lecturing them on the importance of keeping the party vibe alive, emphasizing that no one should be a buzzkill. Still in the middle of her broadcast, Rua's expression turns purely ecstatic as she shares some big news with her loyal followers, announcing that she has landed a new gig. Rua enthusiastically reveals the details of her new project, announcing that she's teaming up with a brand new voice actress named Minato Amane. She excitedly shares that they are not only in the same agency but also attend the same school, expressing her absolute happiness about releasing a CD together as a unit. The comments section of the video is flooded with messages from Rua's devoted followers. Some echo her frustration with the person who ruined the mood at karaoke, while others congratulate her on the new unit, though some are already questioning who her new partner, Minato Amane, actually is. Rua wraps up her broadcast by announcing that her debut event will take place at Shine Mall the Sunday after next, inviting everyone to attend for free. With a playful wink and a wave, she signs off as Ruaheim, promising to see her viewers next time. Suzuki Kazuma apologizes for what happened earlier and introduces himself as a student from class 13. Looking flustered, Ame Minato also apologizes for raising her voice and introduces herself as Ame Minato from class 3. Looking regretful, Suzuki Kazuma admits that he should have properly checked before coming in. Ame Minato, appearing flustered and clutching her clothes, quickly responds with a nervous yais. When Kazuma asks if she also heard about the place from a senior on the library committee, Kazuma reflects on the fact that he wasn't the only person informed about the secret spot. Ame, visibly shy and flustered, stammers an apology for making him wait. After a moment of hesitation, she peeks out from behind the door and tells him that she is okay now. Suzuki Kazuma asks Ame Minato why she is wearing gym clothes. However, Ame quickly turns the question back on him, asking why he decided to change his clothes in the storage room in the first place, leaving Kazuma speechless. Looking flustered and apologetic, Ame Minato explains that she was searching for a place to practice her singing and dancing, which led her to remember and visit this storage room. Ame Minato suddenly reveals her secret, admitting that she is actually a voice actress. She explains that she has an upcoming unit live performance, which is why she sought out the quiet of the storage room to practice. Suzuki Kazuma realizes that Ame Minato is part of the entertainment industry. This thought leads him to recall how several entertainers, including his former childhood friend Rua, attend the academy as specially selected students. Noticing a full-length mirror in the room, Kazuma remarks on Amane's dedication to her practice. Startled, Amane suddenly remembers their classes and asks him about them. Amane hesitantly explains her situation, recalling a heartbreaking moment from that morning. When she arrived at school, she found her desk and chair had been cast out into the hallway, accompanied by a sign that bluntly told her there was no seat for her. Suzuki Kazuma reflects on Ame Minato's distress, realizing that her experience of having her desk removed is a cruel familiarity. As he checks his phone, he's bombarded with mocking messages from Rua Takayashiki, who ridicules him and demands that he kneel and beg for her forgiveness. Having had enough, Kazuma simply taps the block button, cutting Rua out of his life. Suzuki Kazuma looks at Ame Minato, confused as to why someone with her status as a special scholarship student would be going through such a hardship. Amane, appearing flustered, frantically waves her hands and denies the claim. Suzuki Kazuma tells Ame Minato that her voice is actually quite cute. Despite her bangs hiding her face, he finds her voice pleasant and memorable, comparing it to the sound of a rolling bell. Amane, who believes she is neither popular nor attractive, is caught off guard by the sincere compliment, blushing in surprise. Ame Minato becomes overwhelmed, claiming she is nothing compared to Showa Takayashiki, and that many others possess far better voices. She explains that being in a unit with Rua Takashiki is likely why she is being harassed. Kazuma listens, remembering the cruel comments on his own social media about how associating with him would lower Rua's status. He reflects on the toxicity of Rua's fanbase, thinking that pigs simply attract other pigs. Suzuki Kazuma asks Amane Minato why she even teamed up with that pig in the first place. Amane is horrified, frantically warning him that bad-mouthing Ra Takayashiki in this school is incredibly dangerous. Kazuma dismissively tells her it's fine since they are alone, openly admitting he was referring to Ra. Shaken, Amane quietly explains that the decision to form the unit was made by the agency. Amane Minato sadly explains that because she considers herself plain and gloomy, the agency saw her as the perfect background support for Rua Takayashiki. Suzuki Kazuma finds this description harsh and realizes they are both under Teikai Music of the powerful Teikai group. He concludes that regardless of the agency's plan, Rua's pride makes her despise anyone she considers beneath her, likely making her the mastermind behind the cruel bullying Amane has faced, including the incident with her desk. Amane Minato reveals her inner resolve, admitting that she is actually okay with being background support, because she sees it as a rare chance she's been given. With a look of intense determination, she declares that she doesn't want to drag anyone down and intends to give everything she has to her work, leaving Suzuki Kazuma watching her with a surprised expression. Suzuki Kazuma addresses Amane Minato, admitting that he finds her resolve to give her all as background support quite cool. He then realizes that this determination is the reason she came to the storage room to practice. Amane Minato shyly confirms this with a determined yes. Suzuki Kazuma offers to keep Amane Minato company while she practices. He tells her that if he's okay with it, he can give her feedback, though he admits he can only do so from a total amateur's perspective. Amane Minato responds with a blush and a joyful exclamation. Agreeing to Kazuma's offer, they shake hands, and she beams with a bright, happy smile, telling him that she'll be counting on him. Suzuki Kazuma looks at Amane Minato with a surprised and thoughtful expression. He can't help but think that she is far cuter than Rua, whom he mentally envisions as a pig. It is now lunch break. Suzuki Kazuma walks through the hallway carrying water bottles, his mind preoccupied with Amane Minato. He worries that she might be dehydrated after practicing non-stop since the morning. Just as he is lost in thought, a voice suddenly calls out to him. "Hey, Kazu." The person calling Suzuki Kazuma's name is none other than Rua Takayashiki. She immediately begins berating him, demanding to know where he has been and why he is ignoring her. Outraged that he even blocked her on Messenger, she asserts that no one is permitted to ignore her. After narcissistically wondering if he is simply too intimidated by her beauty to look at her, she aggressively grabs him, calling him a gloomy bastard. As Rua continues her outburst, another light-haired boy steps in, visibly irritated by Kazuma's indifference. He demands to know why Kazuma is giving her the silent treatment, reminding him that it is rude to ignore Rua. Theo places a hand on Suzuki Kazuma's shoulder, speaking in a condescending tone. He mocks Kazuma's position as a promising scholarship student of the baseball club, questioning why he wastes his time around Rua instead of practicing. He concludes by suggesting that Kazuma should follow Ame Minato's hard-working example, leaving Kazuma looking annoyed. Theo aggressively grabs Suzuki Kazuma, shouting at him to say something. Confused and irritated by Kazuma's blank look, Theo demands to know if he is being made fun of. Losing his patience, Theo throws a punch at Suzuki Kazuma, however. As the blow lands, Theo is left bewildered, feeling as though he hit nothing at all, while Kazuma remains completely unfazed with a chilling, blank expression. Theo is completely thrown off balance. He realizes with a shock that Suzuki Kazuma is already standing behind him, leaving him to wonder how it happened. Confused and unsettled, Theo questions if his punch actually landed or if Kazuma is simply too pathetic to even react. Suzuki Kazuma looks at the bewildered Theo with a deadpan expression, calmly asking what's wrong and mocking him by questioning if he's out of shape. Completely blindsided and insulted, Theo erupts in anger, shouting back in disbelief. Just as Theo is about to strike again, Rua Takayashiki steps in and shouts for him to stop. A stunned Theo is left speechless as Rua sternly warns him to know his place, declaring that she is the only person allowed to seriously mess with Kazuma. Kazuma tries to address Rua, and for a brief moment she responds with an unexpectedly sweet and affectionate tone. However, the mood shifts instantly, as Rua's expression turns sharp, mocking Kazuma for thinking he looked cool during the confrontation with Theo. She then sternly commands his attention, asserting her dominance and declaring that no one is allowed to mess with her or bully her. Unfazed by Rua's attempt to reclaim her authority, Suzuki Kazuma looks at her with a cold, piercing gaze and declares that he doesn't care who she is. Suzuki Kazuma tells Rua Takayashiki to just leave him alone and walks away with total indifference. Rua is left frozen in shock, collapsing as her Ari rushed to her side, wondering what is wrong with him. However, internally is completely smitten. Her eyes sparkle with hearts as she finds his new, cold personality incredibly cool. 1 week later, the scene shifts back to the school. Yuri is seen walking across the campus, humming a happy tune and appearing to be in high spirits. However, her peaceful stroll is suddenly interrupted as she notices something, causing her to stop abruptly with a surprised exclamation. Suzuki Kazuma catches Yuri in his arms, preventing her from falling. Blushing and completely flustered, Yuri is shocked to find herself in his embrace. While Kazuma calmly asks if she is okay, Yuri apologetically stammers, saying she is sorry for always being this way. Kazuma reassures her, telling her not to worry, and mentioning that he wouldn't want her getting hurt before the real thing. Blushing and looking at him with admiration, Yuri tells Kazuma how amazing he is, mentioning that no matter where they are, he always catches her whenever she trips. Kazuma remains calm and simply replies that it is nothing special. Yuri tells Kazuma that he has been a huge help and has watched over her since a certain day. Kazuma tries to deny it, feeling embarrassed, but Yuri beams with a blush and thanks him heartfeltly once more. Kazuma insists that he didn't do anything special, but as he reflects on Yuri's words, he is struck by the realization that no one had ever said something so kind to him before. Switching to a more practical tone, Suzuki Kazuma gives Yuri some advice on her performance. He suggests that she should walk back to the center of the stage normally instead of spinning, noting that she always loses her balance during that part. Yuri hesitantly argues that it might not look as good on stage without the spin. Yuri insists that it's impossible to reach the center of the stage quickly because it's at least 5 meters away. After considering her concern, Kazuma suggests an alternative, jumping back in a single move, which he believes would actually stand out more on stage. To show her how, he demonstrates the proper way to use the strength in her knees. Suzuki Kazuma effortlessly performs a powerful backward jump to demonstrate the technique. As he lands smoothly, he looks back at Yuri and says, "See, like that," while Yuri watches in utter shock and amazement. Completely stunned by the display of skill, Yuri can only stare in disbelief, exclaiming that such a feat is simply impossible. Still reeling from the display, Yuri exclaims that normal people can't jump like that, comparing his movement to a trampoline. She looks at him in disbelief, wondering if his physical education grades are off the charts. Suzuki Kazuma nonchalantly denies having exceptional PE grades, explaining that he has always been a solid 3 out of 5 since elementary school. Yuri looks on, completely baffled by how someone with such agility could be so average. Suzuki Kazuma notices another detail and mentions that Yuri's posture seems a bit off. Yuri looks embarrassed and agrees, admitting she has never been able to fix her slouch, and that her choreography coach has even gotten angry with her about it. Kazuma remains silent, thoughtfully observing her. Suzuki Kazuma proposes a creative solution, suggesting that Yuri take advantage of her slouch instead of fighting it. He enthusiastically demonstrates a cute cat-like pose, exclaiming "Neon," to show her the way. Confused, Yuri tries to mimic the gesture, questioning the Nyakan approach, and encourages her, explaining that this movement can lead smoothly into Satsuki's dance. Yuri enthusiastically practices the cat-like dance moves suggested by Suzuki Kazuma. Watching her, Suzuki is genuinely impressed, thinking that she looks super cute. Meanwhile, Yuri is left panting and wondering how this strange suggestion actually worked. With a look of realization and excitement, Yuri feels a sudden spark of confidence as the choreography finally starts to click. Excited by her progress, Suzuki Kazuma tells Yuri that it's great, suggests she ask the costume designer to make cat ears and a tail for her. Yuri happily agrees to the idea. Yuri is taken aback by the sudden change in tone. While Kazuma had just praised the idea of cat ears and a tail, he now firmly states that he cannot use it for the unit, leaving Yuri bewildered and speechless. Yuri explains that the cat-themed idea wouldn't match well with Rua, stating that her primary role is to make Rua shine. Kazuma remains silent for a moment before questioning if she is really okay with taking such a supporting role. Yuri confirms that she is fine with her supporting role, admitting that singing while dancing isn't her specialization. Hearing this, Suzuki Kazuma shifts the conversation, telling her that he would actually like her to watch him practice his acting instead. Yuri passionately shares her ambition, revealing that she is a voice actor who dreams of performing as an anime character. She explains that she is giving her all to her current work, in hopes that it will lead to more opportunities. Suzuki Kazuma listens quietly, thinking to himself how positive she is. Moved by Yuri's passion, Suzuki Kazuma admits that he is envious, confessing that he doesn't really have any dreams or goals of his own. Surprised by this, Yuri asks him if there is truly nothing he aspires to become, while Kazuma reflects on how full of life she looks when talking about her work. Suzuki Kazuma pauses, thinking deeply about Yuri's question. He honestly admits that he is fine with not being anything special. His only real wish is to lead an ordinary life that he can be proud of and truly call his own. Yuri gives Kazuma a bright, encouraging smile, telling him that he can become anything he wants, even the ordinary person he aspires to be. Touched by her kindness, Kazuma offers a gentle smile and thanks her. As the moment settles, Yuri shyly mentions that there is something she has been wondering about. Yuri shyly admits she is worried that her interactions with Kazuma might be the reason he fought with Rua Takayashiki, fearing she is putting him in a difficult position. Kazuma quickly reassures her, but then reveals a cold truth. Rua is no longer his childhood friend, leaving Yuri surprised. Yuri stammers, struggling to find the right words as she addresses Kazuma. Seeing her hesitation, Kazuma looks at her with curiosity. Blushing and flustered, Yuri tentatively begins to make a proposal. With a deep blush on her cheeks and a nervous expression, Yuri finally manages to speak, tentatively asking Kazuma if he would like to do something. Just as Yuri gathers her courage, the moment is violently interrupted. Rua Takayashiki storms in with a menacing aura, screaming at them and demanding to know what they are doing together in such a cramped place. Terrified by Rua's sudden and aggressive appearance, Yuri begins to tremble in fear. Rua Takayashiki completely loses her cool, spewing a torrent of insults at Yuri. Screams that you're literal crap and a trash voice actress who isn't popular at all. While Yuri stands there flustered and speechless, Kazuma can only watch in disbelief, wondering if Rua is actually in elementary school, given her childish behavior. Rua puts the pieces together, realizing that the reason Kazuma has been disappearing after school is to meet with Yuri. She continues to belittle Yuri, calling her gloomy and hopeless, before completely losing her composure. Unable to accept the situation, Rua erupts into a loud, sobbing fit of frustration, screaming that she hates this. Overcome by jealousy, Rua Takayashiki begins to sob uncontrollably. She can't wrap her head around why Kazuma is standing beside Yuri, continuing to lash out at the trash girl while feeling completely neglected. Overwhelmed by Rua's sudden rage, Yuri frantically tries to apologize, taking all the blame upon herself and insisting that Kazuma was only helping her. Ignoring Yuri's attempts to apologize, Rua Takayashiki leans in with a terrifying blank-eyed stare. She utters Kazuma's name in a chilling tone, leaving Yuri completely intimidated and trembling in fear. Rua Takayashiki doesn't stop there, aggressively reminding Yuri of her place. She mocks Yuri's appearance, calling her a forehead curtain weirdo, and claiming that getting close to Kazuma is a million years too soon for someone like her. Devastated and humiliated, Yuri can only look on in shock and sadness. Rua's jealousy spirals further as she demands to know if Yuri has ever shown what's under her bangs to Kazuma. In a ridiculous turn, she orders Yuri to wrap her hair up with duct tape to keep her hidden. Kazuma is completely baffled, questioning where she even got the tape and telling her to cut it out. But Rua continues to mock Yuri, calling her nothing more than a support role. Suzuki Kazuma steps in to defend Yuri, telling Rua Takayashiki that the sidekick trains relentlessly every single day just to hold her own. He firmly warns Rua not to get in her way, leaving Rua completely speechless and taken aback. Distraught and confused, Rua Takayashiki demands to know why Suzuki Kazuma is taking Yuri's side, reminding him that he is her childhood friend. Kazuma remains cold and indifferent, stating that he only stands by those who work hard. He then delivers a crushing blow, telling her that they are no longer childhood friends and asking if she forgot what he told her earlier, leaving Rua completely stunned. Rua is stunned by Kazuma's coldness, desperately claiming that her previous actions were just a joke. However, Kazuma doesn't buy it. He confronts her about the pain she has caused others with her jokes and delivers a crushing blow, throwing her own words back at her by telling her that she is the one who needs to learn her place. Takayashiki stands frozen, her face flushing in complete shock and disbelief after being told to learn her place. Without giving her another glance, Suzuki Kazuma turns his back on her and tells Yuri to leave with him, leaving Rua alone and stunned. As Suzuki Kazuma leads Yuri away, completely ignoring her, Rua Takayashiki erupts in a desperate outburst. She screams at him, calling him an idiot and stubbornly insisting that she is far cuter than Yuri, refusing to accept that she could ever lose to a trashier voice actress like her. As they move away from the commotion, Yuri's looks down a saddened expression, softly apologizing to Kazuma and blaming herself for making Rua so angry. Kazuma reassures Yuri that there is no need for her to apologize. Instead, he reveals that the situation has sparked a plan in his mind. With a determined look, he explains that by targeting Rua's oversized pride, he can throw her off balance. He confidently names his new plan the Amanian dance operation, leaving Yuri completely bewildered. At a café, Suzuki Kazuma shows Yuri a set of black hat pins he just purchased. He asks if she has a YouTube channel and proposes that she wear the pins while uploading a video of the cat dance to gain more visibility. Yuri shyly admits she has a channel, but she doubts it will get much attention because she barely has any subscribers. Suzuki Kazuma tells Yuri to trust him, insisting that her dance is good enough to attract attention. He further encourages her by promising to help her with the process. Yuri shyly agrees to follow Kazuma's plan. However, Kazuma takes it a step further, suggesting that she lift her bangs while recording the video. He tells her that she is seriously cute and that it would be a waste to keep her face hidden, leaving Yuri completely flustered and blushing. Overwhelmed and anxious, Yuri confesses her insecurity to Kazuma, explaining that she only feels relaxed when hiding behind her bangs because she is scared of being looked at. Despite her fear, she apologizes and acknowledges that she needs to fix this habit. Kazuma asks Yuri if her agency has ever mentioned her habit of hiding her face. When she replies that they haven't, Kazuma observes that her current look actually suits the image of a support role in her group, at least until the group eventually disbands. Yuri explains the harsh reality of her situation, revealing that her group was merely a publicity stunt intended to disband after just one CD release. Kazuma isn't surprised by the news, noting that it figures and suggesting that she would have been better off going solo from the very beginning. Yuri flusteredly explains that she couldn't have gone solo because her agency is owned by Rua's grandfather. She admits that Rua is completely out of her league in terms of popularity and beauty. Hearing this, Kazuma simply remarks that show business is a dirty place. Yuri looks anxious, questioning if it is truly okay to go up against someone like Rua. Watching her, Kazuma reflects on her deep lack of confidence, concluding that it must be due to her environmental world, where people fear losing their status and ruthlessly hammer down anyone who dares to stand out. Yuri brings up Kazuma's history with Rua, noting that being childhood friends and being liked by someone as influential as Rua is amazing. Kazuma, however, finds the situation merely annoying. Seeing her insecurity, Kazuma decides to bridge the gap between them, telling Yuri that she can simply call him Kazuma, which leaves her completely surprised and blushing. Overjoyed and blushing, Yuri agrees to call him Kazuma-kun. In return, she shyly asks if he would be okay with calling her by her first name Amane. Kazuma accepts her request, calling her Unanswered, which leaves Yuri flustered and overjoyed. Holding up a black cat accessory kit, she declares her determination to do her best for the upcoming video shoot. Noticing her intense reaction, Kazuma asks if something is wrong, but she quickly denies it. The scene shifts to a YouTube video, where Amane appears wearing cat ears. Looking shy but eager, She introduces herself as a voice actress and announces that she will be performing her original Amanian dance for her viewers. A look at Amane's channel reveals her humble beginnings, showing that she currently has only 41 subscribers and a few comments. Still feeling nervous, Amane shyly asks her viewers to watch the video until the end. With a deep breath, she prepares herself and gets ready to start her performance. Amane begins her dance, moving with energy and cuteness while wearing her cat ears, fully committing to her persona for her viewers. Out of breath from her dance, Amane shyly addresses her viewers, announcing that she will be performing the song live at an event this Sunday and inviting them to come and see her. Amane's video ends abruptly as her battery dies just as she asks for subscribers. Watching from his room, Kazuma finds her cute, though he notices several hate comments from Rua's devoted fans. Despite the negativity, he sees some genuine viewers and decides to check out her channel, stubbornly telling himself it's only for information gathering. As Kazuma continues to browse Amane's channel, he discovers a video that is a far cry from her cute dance. In it, Amane is seen screaming his name, Suzuki Kazuma, with an expression of absolute fury. Kazuma then comes across Rua's own channel, Ruaheim Strikes Back, which boasts a staggering 1.1 million subscribers. In a stark contrast to her public image, the video shows Rua completely losing her cool, screaming insults and demanding to know why she isn't being noticed. The video continues, and Rua's tone shifts completely. Looking down with a subdued expression, she concludes her thought saying, "And that's why, with that said," Rua suddenly switches to her public persona, brightly greeting her YouTube audience as Ruaheim, the one and only Rua. Rua quickly recovers, claiming that her sudden fit of rage was nothing more than emotional expression acting. With a playful wink and a cheeky expression, she asks her viewers if they were surprised. Rua maintains her idol persona, giggling as she explains that she was merely channeling some recent frustrations to express her anger. Rua wraps up her video with a cheerful farewell, even teasing the idea of pursuing acting. Watching the screen, Kazuma is left in a state of complete disbelief, wondering what on earth he is even witnessing. Completely drained by Rua's unpredictable behavior, Kazuma can only sigh in resignation, muttering, "Fine then. If that's how she wants to play it." Kazuma decides he's had enough. He vows to crush her without holding back, marking a shift in his resolve. The disparity in their recognition is undeniable. While Rua's video as a popular idol quickly racks up tens of thousands of views, Amanakan's video sits at a mere 50 views, showcasing the overwhelming influence Rua holds. Kazuma reflects on the undeniable cuteness of Amanachan's Neon dance. Convinced that the video would spread if more people saw it, he resolves to take action and help make her popular. Taking the first step to make the video go viral, Kazuma posts a recommendation online, urging others to watch and share Amanachan's content. While he views himself as a plain and friendless introvert in reality, Kazuma's online life is a completely different story. As the vice leader of a major mobile game clan, he possesses a network of loyal followers, and their support is quickly driving up the views for Amanachan's video. A few days pass, and the scene shifts back to the school. A few days later, Amanachan is left in complete shock, staring at her phone in disbelief. Her Nyan dance video has exploded in popularity, racking up 500,000 views in just 3 days. Overwhelmed, she asks Kazuma what on earth he did to achieve this. Kazuma modestly replies that he only helped spread the word a little, insisting that the video would never have gone viral if it weren't for her own talent. Amanachan excitedly tells Kazuma that someone she didn't even know has reached out to say they are coming to her event. Overwhelmed with joy, she can barely contain her happiness. As they talk, Kazuma notes that Rua has also been aggressively promoting her own event, suggesting a large turnout of Teikai Academy students. Now, all that's left is for her to take the bait. Rua makes a bold and unexpected entrance, wearing cat ears and announcing her return to Kazuma with a playful nya. While those around her are stunned by her outfit, Rua aggressively declares that she has seen the viral video and intends to outdo Amanachan at her own game. Watching this unfold, Kazuma is satisfied, knowing he has successfully hooked her into his trap. Rua boldly declares that the Sunday event will be a cat ear showdown, determined to prove once and for all who is the cutest and most popular. Meanwhile, Kazuma watches her closely, noticing a slight twitch in her lips. He knows exactly how her mind works, reflecting on the fact that they were childhood friends after all. Now that everything is in place, the rebellion against the top idol is about to begin. The day of the event has finally arrived at Shine Mall. Kazuma calls out to Amanachan, who is dressed and ready in her idol outfit. As they begin to move, Kazuma stops her, wondering if she's heading in the wrong direction to find the dressing room. Inside the dressing room, Rua Takayashiki is in a foul mood, dismissively telling the manager that she doesn't even want to breathe the same air as that nobody. Kazuma, watching from the side, can't help but feel the tension as Rua continues her haughty behavior. Moving away from Rua, Kazuma mutters about her behavior, calling her a pig. He turns his attention to Unanswered, offering her words of encouragement and reminding her of how much she has improved through her daily practice. As he tells her to be confident, Kazuma realizes that being separated from Rua might actually be for the best, as it allows them to focus without any interruptions. Touched by his kindness, Unanswered looks at Kazuma with a blush. Wondering why he would go to such lengths for her, she asks him directly, questioning his motivations for supporting her. Simply looks back at her, repeating her question as he thinks of an answer. Answering Unanswered's question, Kazuma reflects on the environment of their school. He asks if she also finds Teikai Academy suffocating, specifically pointing out the obvious discrimination and the way scholarship students are treated. Kazuma continues his thought, believing that if someone like Unanswered can truly shine, it could finally open a hole in the wall of discrimination that the school has built. Unanswered is stunned, wondering if she could truly be the one to break the barriers of the school. Kazuma softly explains that while he hopes for that outcome, his main reason for helping was simply because he saw how hard she had been trying and wanted to cheer her on. Overwhelmed by his genuine support, Unanswered looks at him with a blushing, touched expression. Kazuma presents a handmade accessory to Unanswered, casually explaining that he made it himself because he couldn't find anything that suited her perfectly. Unanswered is completely shocked, unable to believe that Kazuma-kun went to such lengths just for her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Unanswered clutches the accessory and thanks Kazuma, telling him how truly happy she is. Filled with new determination, she vows to give her best effort on stage, while Kazuma modestly tries to deflect her praise. Kazuma reaches out and gives Unanswered a gentle pat on the head. As she looks up at him in surprise, he smiles and tells her that the accessory looks far better on her than he had imagined. Unanswered is startled and flustered by Kazuma's sudden attention. As he looks at her, Kazuma recalls a time when he tried to change his hairstyle to feel like a new person, only to be laughed at by others. However, reflecting on his current interaction, he realizes that Minato Unanswered is different from everyone else. With a look of absolute conviction, Kazuma tells Unanswered that she is someone who can truly shine, offering her the unwavering belief and support she needs. Kazuma continues his heartfelt encouragement, telling Unanswered that she is someone who can truly shine because she possesses a big dream and has worked tirelessly to chase it. Unanswered looks on with wide, sparkling eyes, deeply touched by his recognition of her hard work. With a final word of encouragement, Kazuma tells Unanswered to go out there. At that moment, a staff member knocks on the door and announces that it's her turn to take the stage. With a determined expression, Kazuma reaches out to Unanswered, urging her to steal every single fan from that pig-faced idol, blushing and filled with resolve, and takes his hand and firmly agrees, ready to give her performance everything she's got. With a burst of energy and newfound confidence, Unanswered steps out of the room. "Here I go," she exclaims, determined to shine brightly on stage and win over the crowd. Rua Takayashiki takes the stage with overwhelming presence, sporting cute cat ears and a dazzling smile. The crowd erupts in excitement, cheering for their beloved Princess Rua as she greets her fans with confidence and charm. Rua excitedly announces to the crowd that today is the debut event for her new unit, Princess Rua, and her cheerful servants. After declaring that she's about to sing their debut song, she realizes she should introduce her members. With a bright smile, she introduces the girl singing alongside her. Minato Unanswered sparking a huge reaction from the fans. After being introduced by Rua, Minato Unanswered takes the microphone. Despite her visible nervousness and lack of confidence, she bravely introduces herself to the cheering crowd, asking them to please take care of her. The crowd's reaction is instantaneous, with fans wondering who the new girl is and praising her cuteness. Rua, however, is caught completely off guard, her expression shifting to one of shock and irritation as Unanswered begins to steal the spotlight. Flustered by the sudden attention Unanswered is receiving, Rua quickly tries to steer the focus back to the performance, while she inwardly fumes. Convinced that her singing and dancing skills are far superior, she loudly commands the crowd's attention to introduce their song, "The Cutest Dreamer." As the music kicks in, Rua Takayashiki and Minato Unanswered deliver an energetic performance. However, the crowd is entirely mesmerized by Unanswered, with fans buzzing about her incredible cuteness and questioning who this new star is. As the performance continues, the crowd's whispers grow louder, with many admitting that Unanswered's voice and dancing are far superior to Rua's. While Rua struggles to maintain her composure on stage, Kazuma watches from the sidelines with a cold expression, thinking to himself that this is a total loss for her. While Unanswered dazzles the crowd with her performance, Kazuma thinks about how Rua likely assumed she would easily win based on skill alone. However, while Rua was preoccupied with her own whims, Unanswered had been practicing tirelessly every single day, morning, noon, and after school. The crowd is utterly mesmerized, with some describing Unanswered's dancing as gaudier and her cuteness as divine. Kazuma watches from the audience as Amain completely dominates the stage. Thinking back, Kazuma realizes the match was decided long ago. By letting her jealousy over the lowly girl who went viral with Cat Ears Driver, Ra stepped right into Amain's Aerith place where she shines the most. Looking at her now, Kazuma sees a reflection of his own past, noting that Rua is now just like he used to be. Rua stands on stage, visibly shaken and struggling to maintain her composure from the crowd. Kazuma watches her with a cold, observant look, thinking about how she naively dragged herself into a place that simply wasn't her turf. Watching from the shadows, Kazuma remains cold and detached. As he witnesses Rua's struggle on stage, he reflects on the irony of it all, noting that she is now experiencing the exact same despair and powerlessness that he once did. Kazuma's gaze shifts as he realizes that the next phase of the performance is finally starting. While everyone else is captivated by the performance on stage, Suzuki Kazuma spots several men with serious expressions speaking into their earpieces and heading backstage. A sign clearly marks the area as restricted to authorized personnel only. Seeing the situation, Suzuki Kazuma decides it's time to go. Meanwhile, one of the staff members is in a state of panic. He tries to make calls, but no one is answering. Frustrated and desperate, he decides that he has no other choice but to take matters into his own hands and forcibly remove the girl from the stage before the performance concludes. Having overheard the staff member's panic, Suzuki Kazuma stops in his tracks. He leans against the scaffolding and looks at Aki with a piercing gaze, questioning exactly who he intends to drag off the stage. Startled by the sight of several men scattered unconscious across the floor, Aki looks at Suzuki Kazuma in complete disbelief. Overwhelmed by shock, he demands to know who the boy is. With a cold and indifferent gaze, Suzuki Kazuma reveals the truth, identifying Aki as one of the Takayashiki family servants. He calmly deduces that Aki was ordered to sabotage Amain to ensure she served as a proper foil for Rua. Completely caught off guard, Aki is left stunned, demanding to know how Kazuma could possibly know about the secret operation. Suzuki Kazuma strikes Aki, leaving him reeling in pain. With a cold and disdainful gaze, Kazuma mocks Aki for being second-rate and questions if the quality of the Takayashiki family's servants has truly fallen so low. Suzuki Kazuma looks toward the stage, vowing that he won't let anyone ruin the moment Amain worked so hard for. He notes that the stage is secure for now, but he believes that even if someone tried to interfere, it wouldn't matter. The audience has already been captivated by her voice and her brilliance on stage. Amain shines brilliantly on stage, her voice and presence completely commanding the moment. Her radiance has reached a point where no one can stop her anymore, and Suzuki Kazuma looks on, witnessing the fruit of her hard work. Suzuki Kazuma shouts his support, his voice reaching Amain amidst the cheering crowd. Moved by his words, Amain's eyes well up with emotion as she continues to shine on stage, pouring her heart into every moment. Just as the performance is underway, disaster strikes. Amain suddenly trips and falls backward with a loud cry, leaving Lumi staring in complete disbelief. The scene shifts to the exterior of the venue. Despite the spectacular tumble taken by the great Ruaheim, the event ultimately ends in a resounding success. The next day arrives. Suzuki Kazuma looks at his phone, discovering that all the major news sites are publishing articles praising Rua's debut event. It's as if her embarrassing fall and Amain's brilliant performance never even happened. Disgusted by the blatant media manipulation, Suzuki Kazuma realizes that Teikai Music must be working behind the scenes to erase the truth. As he enters the school, he thinks to himself that they are as dirty as ever, but a flicker of determination crosses his face. While the official news outlets remain silent, the power of social media ensures that Amain's brilliance cannot be hidden. She is suddenly surrounded by Eri who have seen the viral videos of her performance, showering her with compliments about her cuteness and the cat ears she wore. Watching her receive the recognition she deserves, Suzuki Kazuma smiles to himself, feeling truly happy for her. Watching Amain be swarmed by her admiring Ari, Suzuki Kazuma reflects on the shift in power. He realizes that with Amain becoming this popular, even someone like Rua will find it hard to mess with her now. Suzuki Kazuma reflects on Rua's current situation, imagining how frustrated she must be after making such a fool of herself. With the incident spreading rapidly online, he believes that even the famous princess would now want to avoid any further scandals. Watching Amain be swarmed by her peers, Suzuki Kazuma realizes that her genuine talent and hard work have finally paid off. He knows that from now on she will only become more popular, and the people around her won't leave her alone. Believing that his conflict with Rua Takayashiki would only hold Amain back, Suzuki Kazuma resolves to step aside and to support her from a distance. He acknowledges Rua's absolute power in the school and her agency, deciding that it's best for Amain if he remains in the background. As he turns to leave, Amain notices his sudden departure. Just as Kazuma tries to walk away to keep his distance, Amain calls out to him. She approaches him with a shy and hesitant demeanor, barely managing to mutter a good morning. Despite her newfound popularity, she seems nervous around him, awkwardly asking for permission to pass by while struggling to find the words to speak to him. Amane nervously asks Suzuki Kazuma if he would be willing to help her practice again after school today. Amane tells Suzuki Kazuma that although the event is over, a different agency has reached out to her for a new anime audition. With a determined look, she admits that she is thinking of changing agencies to find a place that will provide her work as a voice actress, rather than just as an idol. Surprised by her sudden resolve, Kazuma tries to speak up, but Amane cuts him off with a determined expression. She declares that she wants to practice acting specifically with him. Flustered by her forwardness and the use of his first name, Kazuma awkwardly protests, telling her that he doesn't like being called that. Amane leans in close to Suzuki Kazuma with an earnest and pleading expression, asking him to call her by the cute nickname Amanyan. Rua is absolutely livid, watching from the side as Amane flirts with Kazuma. Flustered and confused, Kazuma tries to process the nickname Amanyan, wondering aloud if lifting her bangs changed her personality. Amane simply giggles, teasingly admitting that maybe it did. Amane suddenly clings to Suzuki Kazuma, leaning in close with a mischievous blush. She tells him that if her new attitude is indeed due to her hairstyle, then it is entirely his fault for lifting her bangs. With a bold and suggestive gaze, she asks him to take responsibility for what has done. The hallway erupts in confusion as Amane continues to cling to Suzuki Kazuma. Rua, unable to handle the sight, suffers a complete mental breakdown and faints on the spot. Panicked Aries scream for an ambulance while the mood is completely ruined. A wide shot of the school building under a bright cloudy sky. A narrator notes that Amane's event has come to an end, and it is already June. Since then, Amane has become quite famous. Balancing her new career with her school life, she is seen performing on stage in an idol outfit and spending time with Suzuki Kazuma in the classroom. The incident at the entrance has become a bit of a rumor, as Suzuki Kazuma and Amane continue to share an intimate closeness. Sitting quietly at his desk with a book in hand, Suzuki Kazuma contemplates his current standing in school. He has become known as the mysterious introvert, who somehow attracted the attention of both Rua and Amane. For now, he is content with this position, enjoying the peaceful days of his school life. In the classroom, a Asano named Asano boldly declares that he would die happy if he could date Aayacha Hiragi. Aayacha reacts with disbelief, and the surrounding classmates burst into laughter at the confession, while Suzuki Kazuma looks on with a neutral expression. Aayacha Hiragi hold back, bluntly telling Asano that his desperation to find a girlfriend is completely unattractive. As the other Asanos join in the laughter, they tease him for being transparent and bring up his past rejections by Ruaheim and his previous obsession with Unanswered. Frustrated and embarrassed, Asano tries to insist that his feelings for Aayacha are genuine. Asano continues his desperate plea, listing all the reasons why Aayacha Hiragi is amazing, from her beauty and fashion sense to her status as a dance club scholarship. Asano, however, his over-the-top flattery only makes things worse as Ari laughs in his face, calling his words completely fake. Just as Asano is pouring out his exaggerated praise, Aayacha Hiragi shuts him down completely, casually mentioning that she already has a boyfriend, leaving him in total shock. Asano is completely stunned by the revelation. His Ari chime in to rub salt in the wound, explaining that Ayacha's boyfriend is a mature college Asano and telling him to just give up. Desperate to regain some ground, Asano claims he has money and offers to treat Aayacha Hiragi to tea. Aayacha simply scoffs at the offer, bluntly stating that she has no interest in guys who lack cars or wealth. To drive the point home, she flaunts a brand new luxury handbag, asking Asano if he even recognizes the latest model. Aayacha smugly shows off her expensive handbag, mentioning that while she didn't ask her boyfriend for the price, it's worth hundreds of tea dates. Asano is left speechless and devastated by the sheer difference in their status. Around them, the classmates burst into laughter, mocking him and declaring that in the end, money and looks are all that matter. Suzuki Kazuma watches the unfolding drama with a cold, distant gaze. He thinks to himself about the so-called elite group of scholarship students, noting that while he doesn't mind their noise, their behavior is becoming tiresome. Kazuma watches with a cold expression, wondering if the elite group even notices they are occupying the seat of the rightful owner. His gaze to the Hana, recalling a hidden gem of a book he had rescued from the library's basement. Seeing that she found and borrowed it, he feels a quiet satisfaction that such a precious book is no longer collecting dust. Suzuki Kazuma thinks to himself that it is indeed a good book, and assumes the girl who borrowed it must be eager to sit down and read it. Meanwhile, Hana looks on with a troubled expression, while Kazuma remains silent and detached from the commotion around him. Just as Aayacha Hiragi is basking in her own superiority, a voice calls out to her from off-screen. Surprised, she looks back, wondering who is addressing her. Suzuki Kazuma steps forward with a cold, indifferent expression, He looks directly at Aayacha, who is still perched on the desk, and bluntly tells her that the seat isn't hers, demanding that she move immediately. Stunned by the unexpected confrontation, Aayacha stares back at Kazuma in disbelief, unable to process his blunt and commanding tone. Aayacha quickly snapped back, shouting at Suzuki Kazuma for his casual tone, and calling him a gross introvert. She stubbornly refuses to move, arguing that she can do as she pleases until the bell actually rings. Watching her reaction, Kazuma notes her stubborn nature and recalls a similar cold encounter at a karaoke place, leading him to realize that he is clearly disliked by Hiragi. With no other option, he prepares to handle the situation. In a sudden and unexpected move, Suzuki Kazuma scoops up Rua Takayashiki and carries her in his arms. The surrounding classmates, including Hana, watch in utter disbelief at the shocking sight. Rua is left speechless and blushing intensely, as Suzuki Kazuma holds her close, his face just inches from hers. The surrounding students are stunned by the sudden display of boldness, with some even whispering for him to take his chance while Hana looks on in surprise. Rua is completely overwhelmed with embarrassment and anger, screaming at Suzuki Kazuma for his audacity, and calling him her introverted, gloomy slave. As the tension peaks in the classroom, Aayacha walks in with a bright smile, cheerfully greeting everyone. Aayacha looks on in complete confusion, wondering what is happening as she sees Suzuki Kazuma, still carrying a flustered Rua Takayashiki. She innocently asks if there is some kind of trouble, oblivious to the chaotic tension between the two. Aayacha looks on with a mischievous grin, teasingly asking if her cause did something. However, Suzuki Kazuma remains cold and blunt, reminding her firmly that he is not her property, which leaves Aayacha momentarily flustered. Turning his gaze toward Rua Takayashiki, Suzuki Kazuma speaks with cold indifference, bluntly stating that they are nothing more than strangers now. Stunned by his coldness, Rua Takayashiki looks at Suzuki Kazuma with wide, trembling eyes. She is completely blindsided by his attitude, desperately asking him why he continues to say such mean things to her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Rua Takayashiki cries out to Suzuki Kazuma, recalling how he sided with a voice actress and confessing how much she has been thinking about him. However, Kazuma remains completely unmoved, coldly reminding her that he only stands by those who put in the hard work. As the school chime rings, Suzuki Kazuma feels a surge of liberation. He tells himself that he has finally broken free from Rua's control and can now live his life on his own terms. He firmly resolves that he will no longer side with those who act superior simply because of the privileges they were given. Determined to reclaim his identity, he decides to embrace the life of a normal high school student, even looking into part-time work to achieve his independence. Determined to live an independent life, Suzuki Kazuma thinks about how valuable it is to earn money through one's own hard work. As he looks over some materials, he wonders what kind of part-time job would be the best fit for him. Kazuma comes across a job opening with an impressively high hourly wage for a maid and butler cafe. The prospect of the work brings back memories of his middle school years, recalling how he was forced to live at Rua's mansion and undergo rigorous training in cleaning and serving, all under the pretext of preparing him to serve the Takayashiki family in the future. Deciding that the distance is manageable, Suzuki Kazuma applies for the position, hoping to put his forced training to good use. Upon arriving at the cafe, he is greeted by an enthusiastic manager who hires him on the spot, setting his start date for the coming weekend. Aayacha is highly impressed by Kazuma's demeanor. Complimenting his seriousness and polished manners, she tells him how glad she is that they found someone like him, leaving Kazuma feeling a bit awkward. Aayacha explains to Suzuki Kazuma that the cafe is small, with only 2 people working the floor while she spends most of her time in the kitchen. However, she reassures him by mentioning a reliable, kind, and honest senior staff member he can turn to for any help. The exterior of the cafe is shown, with Suzuki Kazuma looking towards the building, as birds chirp peacefully in the air. Entering the cafe, Suzuki Kazuma introduces himself to a girl in a maid outfit, who reacts with surprise. Recalling Elia's mention of a reliable senior, Kazuma can only hope that she is as kind as promised. Yuna is left in utter disbelief, her eyes wide with shock as she realizes that the new part-timer arriving today is none other than Suzuki. A series of flashes preview the future, where Rua Takayashiki seems completely smitten by Kazuma's words. She interprets his statement about working hard as a test of her love, vowing to work hard for him, while a caption warns that a fatal mistake is already clear. Rua Takayashiki is absolutely livid, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Dressed in a maid outfit she had kept secret from everyone, she points an accusing finger at Suzuki Kazuma. She cannot believe that of all people, Kazuma is the one to find out about her job, and even worse, he is now her junior at the cafe. Suzuki Kazuma stares blankly, remaining completely silent, despite Rua's demand for him to say something. Rua grows impatient with Kazuma's silence, and asks why he's suddenly so quiet. Feeling self-conscious, she points out how ridiculous she looks in her maid outfit and tells him to just laugh if he wants to. Yet she reflects on the idea of laughing at someone who is working hard. Confused by her sudden outburst, Kazuma simply asks, "Why?" Rua is left speechless and deeply flustered by Kazuma's words. Blushing furiously, she frantically denies that she is actually working hard, unable to handle the sudden kindness. Zuki. Kazuma observes the surroundings and remarks that Rua Takayashiki has cleaned quite thoroughly. When he questions her, Rua quickly becomes defensive, insisting that her efforts are nothing serious and that she is only working at the cafe because the pay is good. Suzuki Kazuma observes the cafe, noting that even the most hidden spots behind, light fixtures, window corners, and under furniture have been left spotless. He concludes that Rua Takayashiki has cleaned even the hardest dosy places. When Rua tries to deflect, suggesting someone else might have done it, Kazuma points out that her hands are red, providing undeniable proof that she has been working hard with water. Suzuki Kazuma further impresses Rua Takayashiki by noticing that her knees are dirty, concluding that she must have been scrubbing hard-wrenched areas before finishing with the mopping. Overwhelmed by his attentiveness and unable to deny her efforts, Rua snaps at him, calling him annoying. Trying to hide her flustered state, Rua suddenly switches back to her commanding tone, shouting at Suzuki Kazuma to hurry up and change into his uniform. She declares that she has a lot to teach him before the cafe opens for the day. Kazuma simply watches her, a calm and slight smile appearing on his face. Rua Takayashiki is in her element, professionally taking orders and managing the busy cafe with a bright, welcoming smile. From recording a request for Neapolitan pasta to politely handling the bill and change for her customers, she carries out her tasks with grace and efficiency. As he watches Rua Takayashiki serve customers with a bright, genuine smile, Suzuki Kazuma can't help but feel surprised. He realizes that she is completely different here than she is in the classroom. Watching Rua Takayashiki serve customers with a bright smile, Suzuki Kazuma realizes that she isn't just putting on an act, she truly seems to enjoy herself more here than she does at school, appearing far more lively and spirited. As he carries trays of food through the crowded cafe, Kazuma tells himself that he must stay focused to ensure he doesn't slow them down. Once the busy period subsides, Rua Takayashiki slumps over the counter, completely drained from her hard work. She lets out a long sigh, admitting how exhausted she is. Still catching her breath, Rua asks if the lunch rush is always this intense. Kazuma confirms that it is, though the pace slows down significantly toward the evening. Looking at her, he realizes just how demanding it must be for her to juggle these responsibilities along with her activities in the dance club. Rua laughs off Kazuma's sympathy, boasting about her own abilities. With a confident smile, she declares that she's a genius and that balancing her responsibilities is a piece of cake. Rua turns the conversation toward Kazuma, expressing her genuine amazement at how quickly he moved during the rush. She asks him if he's really a first-time part-timer, leaving Kazuma surprised and relieved that he was able to keep up without getting in her way. Rua looks at Kazuma with a surprised expression before breaking into a bright, genuine smile. She tells him that far from being a hindrance, he was actually super helpful. Suddenly, Rua snaps out of her warmth and panics, shouting that they cannot be friendly. A bewildered Kazuma asks why they would be enemies, to which Rua frantically explains that because he broke ties with her, he is now officially her enemy. Suzuki Kazuma calmly admits that while it's true he cut ties with her, it doesn't mean he is against Rua and the others. This unexpected maturity leaves Rua completely flustered, and she frantically tries to argue back, reminding him of the moment he stormed out of karaoke. Rua turns toward Kazuma, emphatically arguing that he must also hate her and her group, refusing to accept the friendly atmosphere between them. Rua is left wide-eyed and shocked as Kazuma calmly admits that he doesn't actually hate her or her friends. After denying his hatred for Rua and her friends, Kazuma falls into a deep thought, realizing that the entire situation was orchestrated by someone he considers a pig. Rua is completely stunned, questioning if the pig Kazuma mentioned was actually her. After Kazuma confirms it, and they acknowledge that everything happened according to her orders, he catches her off guard by admitting that he actually admires her now. Suzuki Kazuma expresses his genuine admiration for Aayacha Hiragi's thorough and efficient work. He asks her, addressing her as Hiragi-senpai, to teach him more moving forward. Caught off guard and blushing, Aayacha sighs and reluctantly agrees to take the junior under her wing. Aayacha warns Kazuma to prepare himself, promising to be a strict mentor. Kazuma politely accepts, calling her senpai. As Aayacha prepares to ask him a question, she finds his formal demeanor quite fitting for a butler. Aayacha confronts Kazuma, questioning why he switched roles with her when the last customer entered. Kazuma attempts to explain that he did it to let her handle the customer while he dealt with the piling dishes. But Aayacha bluntly calls him a liar. Rua looks at Kazuma with a soft, curious expression, Noting that based on his hard work today, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who would act without a reason. Kazuma remains silent, his gaze steady as he listens to her. Suzuki Kazuma looks at Rua Takayashiki and reveals the truth. The customer he stepped in for was actually there for her. He recalls the man's suspicious behavior, noting how he was fiddling with his bag and taking secret photos, leaving Rua stunned. Rua admits that there have been a few suspicious moments in the past and wonders if the man is a regular offender. Kazuma agrees, leading Rua to express her amazement that he could realize all of this just by looking at the man. Rua admits that she can't simply kick the man out. Surprised by her hesitation, Kazuma asks why she doesn't just remove him, wondering where the boldness she usually displays at school has gone. Rua sighs and looks distressed, explaining that she can't just be bold since they are customers. Kazuma observes her before turning his comment toward Hiragi, telling her that she is too serious. Seeing Rua's hesitation to act against a customer, Suzuki Kazuma takes the initiative. He tells her to let him know the moment that suspicious man returns, promising that he will take over the situation. Rua looks at him with a surprised expression. Rua is visibly moved, blushing as she thanks Kazuma and remarks on his kindness, just as she begins to address him. The chime of the doorbell rings, prompting her to instantly switch back into her professional persona to welcome the arriving customer. Just as Rua welcomes the new customer, a cheerful girl bursts in, calling out to Kazuma. Rua recognizes her as Amain, while Kazuma is left completely bewildered. Amain beams with excitement, explaining that she simply had to see his new part-time job for herself. Amain looks around and remarks that someone seems familiar. This causes Aayacha Hiragi to freeze in place, completely shocked. Suzuki Kazuma watches her, thinking that she must be desperate to keep her job at the cafe a secret from anyone at school. Suzuki Kazuma quickly steps in, pushing the frozen Aayacha Hiragi away from Amain's sight. He urges her to take a break, suggesting that her fear might just be her imagination, while a flustered Hiragi can only weakly agree. Suzuki Kazuma brings over the cream sodas, apologizing for the wait. Amain is overjoyed, thanking him enthusiastically as she receives her treat. Amain finds the cafe lovely and enjoys the delicious cream soda. She explains that she asked her manager for time off to recharge by seeing Kazuma before a big job today, and she can't help but admire him in his tuxedo. Amain beams with joy, declaring that Amanyan is very happy. She excitedly shares with Suzuki Kazuma that thanks to everyone's support, she has secured 3 regular roles in her voice acting career. Kazuma smiles and tells her he is glad to hear that things are going so well. However, Amain suddenly looks surprised as she remembers something, interrupting with a, "By the way." Amain asks Kazuma if Rua has come by the cafe. Kazuma replies that he hasn't told her about his job yet. Amain is relieved, but then mentions that Rua has taken a 2-week break. Since it's rare for someone as popular as Rua to take such a long vacation, Amain worries that she might be up to something strange. Amain suddenly notices the time and realizes she must leave. Kazuma bids her farewell, thanking her and reminding her to be careful on her way. Just as Suzuki Kazuma bids her farewell and tells her to take care, Amain suddenly throws her arms around him in a surprise hug, leaving him completely stunned. Surprised by the sudden affection, Kazuma calls out her name in confusion. Amain giggles and pulls back, beaming with energy as she declares that she is now fully charged and her power is at max. Waving cheerfully as she steps out the door, Amain calls back to Suzuki Kazuma, thanking him for the treat before she departs. As Amain departs, Suzuki Kazuma watches her with a thoughtful expression, noting how much she has brightened up. He reflects that now freed from the influence of Rua and her former agency, she seems to have finally found her true self again. A close-up of Suzuki Kazuma's sharp, determined gaze. He thinks to himself that if the people who harmed Amain try anything again, he will be the one to stop them. Having just stepped outside, Amain peeks back from behind the wall, her face flushing with a mix of shock and excitement. She is left stunned, wondering what exactly she just heard from Kazuma. Amain stands frozen and blushing, her mind racing as she recalls the rumors at school about her and Suzuki Kazuma. While she had previously dismissed the whispers of them being close as completely false, his sudden, protective vow has left her questioning the true nature of their relationship. Amain remains flustered, thinking about how close she and Suzuki Kazuma appeared to others. However, she breathes a sigh of relief, realizing that he kept her job a secret. And Amain's expression softens, her cheeks flushing with emotion. As she looks back at the cafe, she can't help but think that Suzuki really is a good guy. The focus shifts to a YouTube screen, where Rua Takayashiki appears as a popular idol known as Rua Haim. With over 1 million subscribers, she cheerfully greets her audience and shares a thought she recently learned from a close friend: that working hard is important. Still in her video, Rua looks thoughtful and slightly flustered. She admits that the idea of hard work really resonated with her, leading her to wonder what she should work hard on for the sake of someone important to her. With a look of pure determination and joy, Rua announces her realization to her viewers. To protect those who are important to her, she must rely on power. Still in her video, Rua beams with joy as she tells her viewers that her grandfather fully supported her goal and offered to provide her with whatever she needed, boasting about his generosity. Still in her video, Rua cheerfully announces that because of her grandfather's constant support, she will be taking a 12-week break starting tomorrow to go on a trip with him. Rua jokingly worries that her grandfather might get too excited and raise his blood pressure because he loves her so much. She promises to do her best to make him happy and encourages her viewers to work hard together with her before waving goodbye to the camera. The comment section is flooded with messages from Rua's devoted fans, who praise her cuteness and admiration, while eagerly anticipating photos from her trip with her grandfather. It has been 1 week since Suzuki Kazuma started his part-time job. While he is changing clothes, revealing a surprisingly muscular and toned physique, Ayuna suddenly opens the door, catching him completely off guard. Yuna lets out a loud, flustered scream, completely overwhelmed by the sight. She yells at Kazuma, calling him an idiot for changing in that room. Now fully dressed, Kazuma calmly responds that it couldn't be helped since the changing room is designated for women only. Yuna looks at Kazuma with concern and asks if he is okay. Kazuma asks what she means. Yuna hesitantly explains that she noticed his back earlier, recalling the sight of numerous scars covering his skin. Kazuma quickly puts his clothes back on, dismissively telling Yuna that the scars are from a long time ago and that everything is fine now. Yuna looks at him, appearing hesitant as she tries to find the words to respond. Yuna is completely taken aback by Kazuma's physique. She admits that she couldn't tell at all when he was dressed and begins questioning him, wondering if he was part of any sports clubs or if he had undergone some kind of special training to achieve such a build. Suzuki Kazuma clarifies that he wasn't part of any sports clubs, mentioning that he simply did some training back in the day. Yuna is intrigued and about to ask for more details when a voice suddenly calls out for Hiragi. Suzuki Kazuma teases Yuna, asking if she is interested in a guy's naked body. Completely flustered, Yuna defensively shouts that she is used to such things and has already done everything with her boyfriend, caught off guard by her boldness. Kazuma apologizes, realizing that Yuna is an experienced adult when it comes to love. Yuna ends the exchange with a blushing but firm confirmation. Now fully dressed in his work attire, Suzuki Kazuma politely asks Yuna to guide him again today. Still feeling a bit embarrassed, Yuna clears her throat and tells him to follow her. Yuna lets out a light giggle, still feeling the lingering tension from their previous conversation. Suzuki Kazuma follows close behind, watching her with a small, amused smile as they make their way to the café floor. Suzuki Kazuma diligently carries out his duties at the café, balancing a heavy stack of plates as he clears the tables. He notes that the peak rush has finally passed and things are settling down, despite the manager having to go home because of a cold. Even as he manages the cleanup, he continues to attend to the customers' orders. Amidst the lingering bustle of the shop, as Suzuki Kazuma continues his work, he is suddenly confronted by a group of rowdy customers. One of the men points directly at him with a smug grin, boldly declaring that his order isn't food but Kazuma himself. The liars continue their advances, loudly inviting Yuna to go for a drive to the beach in their car. Watching the scene from a distance, Suzuki Kazuma is visibly disgusted, thinking to himself that they are a textbook example of annoying, flirty customers. However, recalling Yuna's earlier boast about her romantic experience, he tells himself that she should be able to handle the situation smoothly. Yuna is completely frozen, her face flushing deep red as she stammers incoherently. She tries to politely ask them to stop, pleading that they are causing trouble. But her lack of composure only fuels the customers. Amusement, they laugh heartily, finding her flustered reaction incredibly cute. Watching Yuna's panicked state, Suzuki Kazuma looks on with a skeptical expression. He wonders what is wrong with her, questioning if she is simply holding back her true self because they are customers. The situation takes a turn for the worse as Lior becomes bolder, demanding a quick peek and attempting to lift Yuna's skirt. Despite her desperate pleas for them to stop, the Lior continues to harass her, mockingly suggesting that her short outfit was meant for showing off. Lior gives a smug, threatening look, warning Yuna that she had better listen to him, or he might get violent. His friends chime in, boasting about a karate master named Kachin who can easily break 10 tiles, intensifying the atmosphere of intimidation. Lior holds up a glass bottle, boasting that a karate master can easily break it with their bare hands. Yuna looks on in distress, completely overwhelmed, as Lior menacingly offers to show her exactly what he means. Lior strains with all his might, grunting as he tries to crush the bottle to intimidate Yuna. However, the bottle remains perfectly intact, leaving him to simply mutter a casual oops after his failed demonstration. Lear's companions burst into laughter, teasing him for his failed attempt and the fact that the bottle flew away. Furious, Lear shouts for them to shut up and insists on trying again. He notices that Suzuki Kazuma has caught the bottle and aggressively demands that the kid bring it back to him. Suzuki Kazuma stands with a composed expression, holding the glass bottle firmly in his hand. Beside him, Yuna looks on with wide eyes, visibly surprised by his calm demeanor. Suzuki Kazuma calmly tells Lear to watch, his expression unreadable, is taken aback by the boy's confidence, questioning what's wrong with him, while Yuna looks on in shock, whispering his name. With a cool and composed expression, Suzuki Kazuma tosses the glass bottle. It flies through the air and lands perfectly in the trash can, leaving Yuna completely amazed by his effortless accuracy. The cafe erupts in cheers as the customers are left in awe of Suzuki Kazuma's skill. Yuna stares at him, her expression filled with surprise and newfound admiration for the boy. Lear and his group are left in a state of complete shock, their mouths agape as they process Suzuki Kazuma's unexpected precision. Recovering from his momentary shock, Lear snaps and lashes out at Suzuki Kazuma. He aggressively confronts him, shouting that simply cutting the bottle doesn't make him strong and accusing him of acting high and mighty. Unmoved by Lear's shouting, Suzuki Kazuma clenches his fist and responds with a cold, calm demeanor, stating that such a thing is obvious. Just as Lear finishes his outburst, Suzuki Kazuma suddenly strikes, landing a precise and heavy punch that leaves the Lear stunned. The impact sends her crashing to the ground with a heavy thud. As he groans in pain, one of his companions looks on in utter confusion, wondering what happened to their leader. Suzuki Kazuma calmly adjusts his tie, looking down at the defeated Lear with a cold, composed gaze inside the cafe, noting that while he can't speak properly now, he should be back to normal in a few days. Lear is left trembling in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. Kazuma then offers to cover the bill from his own paycheck as compensation for Lear's throat, before adding a mysterious condition. Suzuki Kazuma tightens his grip on Lear's throat, his expression cold and menacing. He sternly warns Lear to never come back to the cafe or bother the girl again, demanding a response. Lear, trembling and sweating in fear, can only nod frantically in agreement. Moments later, Lear is hurriedly pushed out of the cafe, with his bewildered friends calling after him as they leave. With the troublemakers finally gone, Suzuki Kazuma turns to Aayacha Hiragi and softly asks if she is all right. He gives her a gentle compliment, telling her that she did well. Moved by his kindness and protection, Ayacha's eyes well up with tears as she tightly hugs Kazuma. Still clinging to Suzuki Kazuma, Aayacha Hiragi is overcome with emotion. Through her tears, she calls him an idiot for showing off, stubbornly claiming that she was going to tell those guys off herself, and that he didn't need to interfere. As Aayacha clings to him, the other patrons in the cafe begin to clap, cheering for Suzuki Kazuma and calling his intervention refreshing. The customers in the cafe express their relief, mentioning how the rowdy group had been causing trouble. In the midst of the praise, someone calls Suzuki Kazuma a wonderful boyfriend, causing a shocked and blushing Aayacha to stammer in confusion. Panicking and completely flustered, Aayacha Hiragi waves her hands wildly as she loudly denies the rumors, insisting that Suzuki Kazuma is not her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Kazuma stands behind her, watching the scene with a calm and indifferent expression. The customers burst into laughter, completely ignoring Ayacha's protests. Even as someone suggests they stop teasing her, they can't help but point out how cute she looks while blushing. Suzuki Kazuma watches in silence as Lear looks down, his previous arrogance completely gone. Suzuki Kazuma turns to Aayacha Hiragi, apologizing for the awkward situation and the wrong impression the regular customers have formed about them. Aayacha, visibly blushing and flustered, stammers in response. Her heart beats fast as she looks at him, softly admitting that she is actually the one who should apologize for how she acted earlier. As the tension settles, Suzuki Kazuma notices something and prepares to leave the room. He informs a surprised Aayacha Hiragi that he'll be right back, explaining that a customer who just left seems to have forgotten something. As Suzuki Kazuma steps away, Aayacha Hiragi stands alone in the cafe, lost in thought. She wonders to herself why she always finds it so difficult to say what she truly feels. Suzuki Kazuma hurries through the alleyway, calling out to the customer, who had just left the cafe, to let them know they forgot something. The customer stops and turns around. Recognizing Suzuki Kazuma, he expresses his gratitude, thanking him for being so thorough and chasing after him to return the item. The man looks confused as he checks his pockets, confirming that he still has his keys, phone, and wallet. He tells Suzuki Kazuma that he might be mistaken, to which Kazuma simply responds with a neutral, "Is that so?" Suzuki Kazuma shows the customer the small object he retrieved, explaining that he found it attached under table 8 and suspects it is some kind of bugging device. Suzuki Kazuma warns the man to be careful, mentioning the dangerous types they encountered earlier. While the customer outwardly acts surprised, a close-up of his face reveals a suspicious and calculating look. Looking at Suzuki Kazuma's calm yet sharp expression, the customer remarks that honestly, Kazuma seems much more dangerous to him than those three people. Ren laughs, dismissing Kazuma's warning as a joke. However, Kazuma remains serious, recalling a specific moment from earlier. He notes that while everyone in the cafe was distracted by what was happening at table 2, he was the only one looking down. Ren confesses that he was actually scared and avoided eye contact to stay safe. However, Kazuma remembers how he calmly reached under the table to grab the device, right as Ren sliced the bottle, leaving Ren amazed by his composure. Suzuki Kazuma's expression turns sharp and menacing as he looks at Ren, coldly calling him a rat for his deceptive actions. Without warning, Suzuki Kazuma strikes Ren, sending the man reeling backward. Ren is caught completely off guard by the sudden blow, but as he recovers, a curious expression crosses his face. After the sudden attack, Ren doesn't seem deterred. Instead, he reflects on Suzuki Kazuma's capabilities, noting that the rumors about him being the strongest of the 10 elites and the pride of the Takayashiki family are true. With a small chuckle, Ren asks what Kazuma plans to do next. The scene transitions with a teaser image of a maid looking through a window, accompanied by text, hinting at a moment of sudden closeness that leaves her flustered. The view shifts to the cafe's exterior under the night sky. Inside, Yuna looks on with a thoughtful and admiring expression, admitting to herself that Suzuki Kazuma was truly amazing today. Yuna stands alone in the cafe, her mind drifting back to Suzuki Kazuma. She wonders who he really is, contrasting his invisibility at school with how capable he was in handling the thugs. A soft blush creeps onto her face as she remembers how consistently kind he has been to her. Lost in her thoughts within the quiet cafe, Yuna makes a firm decision. She tells herself that when Suzuki returns, she will finally be honest and tell him exactly how she feels. Back in the alley, Suzuki Kazuma lets out a sigh of exhaustion as he helps the defeated Ren walk away from the scene. As he carries the defeated Ren, Kazuma questions him about the Takayashiki family's role in ordering the removal of the women around him. While Ren refuses to answer the specific order, he admits that the rumors of Kazuma being the strongest of the top 10 are true. Uninterested in further conversation, Kazuma dismisses Ren as a mere rat and walks away, his fist clenching tightly. With a cold and intense gaze, Kazuma delivers a final warning, telling Ren to go back and inform his employer to stay out of his sight. Ren, looking defeated and desperate, argues that he cannot simply return home failing his mission, and being humiliated by a high school brat would leave him with no place left in the underworld. Kazuma simply looks on with a mocking curiosity. Driven by desperation, Ren suddenly pulls a knife from his bag. He believes that if he can take down Suzuki Kazuma, his reputation will spread throughout the underworld, potentially landing him a new job. Ren's expression turns sinister as he suggests an alternative, targeting Kazuma's cute little maid to win the favor of Lady Rua. Without further warning, he lunges forward, swinging his knife in a desperate attack. However, Kazuma remains completely unfazed, staring back at him with a cold, piercing gaze. In a flash, Kazuma neutralizes Ren's sudden attack, sending the man crashing to the pavement with a heavy thud. Ren lies defeated and groaning in pain, while Kazuma stands over him with a cold, indifferent expression. Standing over the defeated Ren, Suzuki Kazuma looks down with cold indifference. He decides to let him go, but only on one condition, that Ren cuts all ties with the Takayashiki family, just as he once did. With his warning delivered, Kazuma turns and walks away, leaving the broken man behind. The tension of the encounter fades as the scene shifts, revealing a quiet cafe standing under the night sky. Standing outside the closed cafe, Suzuki Kazuma looks down at the ground, realizing that multiple surveillance bugs had been installed. He coldly crushes them under his shoe and sweeps away the remains, relieved that he managed to retrieve them before Aayacha Hiragi noticed. Just as he finishes cleaning, a familiar voice calls out to him. After dealing with the bugs outside, Suzuki Kazuma returns to the cafe to find Yuna cheerfully announcing that she has finished cleaning the kitchen. When she asks about his progress, Kazuma confirms he has also finished. Yuna is impressed by how sparkling the place is, leading Kazuma to tease her about her constant nagging to wipe under the tables, to which Yuna responds with a playful good boy. Yuna looks at Suzuki Kazuma and asks if he is free to have some tea, though she humbly notes that her brewing skills aren't as good as the manager's. Suzuki Kazuma agrees to have tea with Yuna. As they sit together at the counter, Yuna curiously asks why he decided to work there. Kazuma reflects on his past, admitting that he simply wanted to try doing normal high school things, as his life had previously been consumed by taking care of that pig, prompting a small laugh from Yuna. Yuna bursts into laughter, genuinely amused by Kazuma's bluntness. She asks him in disbelief if he seriously calls Ruaheim a pig, remarking that of everyone in the world, he is probably the only one who could ever say such a thing to the granddaughter of the prestigious Takayashiki family. Suzuki Kazuma turns the conversation toward Yuna, questioning why someone who wears expensive brand name items would need to work a part-time job. He remarks that she doesn't seem like someone who is short on money. Yuna is caught off guard, letting out a small sigh as she struggles to find an answer, eventually starting to explain the truth. Yuna finally answers Suzuki Kazuma's question, admitting that all of her expensive brand name items are actually fakes. Yuna opens up further, admitting that she has no money at all. With her father gone, things have become tight at home, forcing her to take a part-time job to help with living expenses. She confesses that her brand name items are actually cheap, second-hand fakes that even a grade schooler could afford. While Suzuki Kazuma listens with a serious expression, Yuna continues her heartbreaking confession, admitting that she is the type of person who always wants to look good. She confesses that everything from the stories about a college boyfriend to her claims of having experienced everything was a lie. She reveals that she kept acting as if she were different from everyone else, simply because she couldn't admit that she was just a normal person. A heavy silence falls between them. Looking at the coffee on the counter, Suzuki Kazuma quietly asks Yuna why she decided to tell him everything. Yuna admits she isn't sure why she's revealing everything, but she felt a strong desire for Kazuma to hear the truth. With a pained expression and clutching her chest, she confesses that lying to him hurts her deeply. Looking down with a regretful expression, Yuna apologizes to Kazuma. She admits that it was selfish of her to open up about her struggles, especially considering what had happened between them at the karaoke. Kazuma reflects on the past, mentioning that he was the only one who didn't laugh at Yuna. He simply figured that she must have had a reason for her behavior. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yuna admits that the reason she felt drawn to him was that it felt like she was looking at herself. Yuna continues her heartfelt confession, admitting that while she once mocked Kazuma for being Rua's servant, she was actually the one subservient to Rua, just to stay in her upper class. She reveals that she forced herself to follow the crowd, but when she saw Kazuma trying his hardest to fit in, she couldn't bring herself to laugh because she realized they were exactly the same. Overwhelmed by emotion, Yuna apologizes to Suzuki Kazuma, admitting that she was the worst for projecting her own issues onto him and acting cold. She confesses that she is a liar, full of complexes and pretending to be someone she isn't, ending with a heartbreaking admission that she truly hates herself. Kazuma simply responds, Despite the lies and the insecurities Yuna has revealed, Kazuma looks at her with a steady gaze. He softly tells her that even so, he still respects her. Yuna continues to pour her heart out, admitting that everything she ever told him was a lie, from her money to her boyfriend doll, just to maintain her image within Rua's clique. Confused by her sudden desperation, Kazuma simply tells her that she's wrong, leaving Yuna completely stunned. Yuna tries to brush off Kazuma's praise, insisting that anyone could do what she does. However, Kazuma firmly corrects her, stating that he doesn't care about recommendations boyfriend's brand names. He looks at her with sincerity, telling her that he respects her because she works seriously and gives everything she has, calling her the most wonderful and hardworking maid in the entire world. Blushing and visibly shaken by the heartfelt words, Yuna tries to regain her composure. She tells Suzuki that he shouldn't be so quick to give such compliments to girls, warning him that his girlfriend would likely be upset if she found out. Confused by the mention of a girlfriend, Kazuma asks for clarification. Yuna then asks if he is dating a certain girl, but Kazuma simply denies it, leaving Yuna to reflect on his answer. Yuna looks at Kazuma with a bewildered expression, unable to believe his answer. She insists that the girl seemed completely infatuated with him, and questions why he wouldn't take the opportunity to date someone so popular and attractive. Yuna looks on in shock as Kazuma remains silent for a moment, holding his cup. He then calmly admits that he never really thought about the possibility of dating her. Kazuma continues his thought, stating that he doesn't want to like someone just so he can brag about them. Yuna, completely flustered and blushing, is once again struck by his unexpectedly cool and sincere attitude. Yuna acknowledges that Kazuma isn't dating the other girl. As Kazuma struggles to find the right words to ask her something, Yuna looks on in surprise, wondering if he could possibly be talking about someone like her. Just as the tension between Kazuma and Yuna peaks, Rua Takayashiki makes a sudden and dramatic entrance, accompanied by Aayacha. She cheerfully greets Kazuma and mocks Yuna, calling her a little thief kitty. Rua reveals that she had been monitoring Kazuma through bugs and a lackey, claiming that all her efforts are for his sake. Rua excitedly presents a small girl in a sleek dark outfit to a bewildered Kazuma. She proudly introduces her as Hinokami Rei, the newest member of the Takayashiki family's top 10, boasting that despite her tiny size, she is incredibly strong. Rua smugly declares that while a top 10 member isn't necessary to deal with someone like Kazuma, she brought Rei to crush any obstacles in the way of their love, bragging about her own hard work. Kazuma, completely unimpressed, wonders what the pig is talking about. though he privately notes that the kid is actually quite skilled. With a smug and condescending smile, Rua leans toward Yuna, looking down on her as she mockingly asks if she is just a useless little nobody. Rua looms over Yuna with a menacing, mocking smile, demanding to know why she is putting her hands on her Kazuma. A startled and intimidated Yuna asks how Rua even found the cafe, only for Rua to dismissively reveal that she has known about Yuna working there since long ago. Rua wears a sadistic smile as she reveals the extent of her influence, explaining that all of her classmates undergo background checks. She begins to list Yuna's secrets, mocking her for using fake brand items and lying about having a college boyfriend, leaving Yuna completely stunned and exposed. Rua continues her verbal assault on Yuna, leaning in with a condescending smirk. She admits that watching Yuna pretend to be high class was entertaining, but she makes it clear that she won't ignore someone like Yuna trying to flirt with Kazuma. Rua leans in close with a menacing gaze, delivering a crushing blow by revealing she can strip Yuna of her scholarship and even have her expelled. Terrified and trembling, Yuna can only stammer in disbelief. Rua coldly declares that this is now war, mocking Yuna for thinking she is still in any position to flirt with Kazuma. Rua points an accusing finger at Yuna, shouting that she looked down on Kazuma with cold eyes at the karaoke and is now just pretending to be close to him. She calls Yuna lying little faker, leaving Yuna trembling in shock and tears. Kazuma finally intervenes, telling Rua that enough is enough and stating he holds no grudge against Hiragi. But Rua continues to shout, claiming Kazuma was the one pulling the strings back then. Rua snaps at Kazuma, ordering him to stay out of the situation as she declares it a fight between women. Turning her attention back to a terrified Yuna, Rua mockingly recalls the comedy gold lies Yuna had told, specifically bringing up a fabricated story about a classy Bayside date and a romantic goodnight kiss with a boyfriend. Rua breaks into a fit of mocking laughter, completely enjoying the act of humiliating Yuna. She ridicules Yuna's fake dating history, calling the stories absolutely cringeworthy and laughing at the absurdity of her lies. Rua doesn't stop her assault, calling Yuna an airheaded, lying fake and laughing at how hilarious her lies were. She then maliciously suggests that she might expose Yuna's true nature to everyone. As Yuna breaks down in tears, Kazuma looks on with a sharp, intense expression, calling out her name, Hiragi. Just as the tension reaches its peak, Kazuma suddenly pulls Yuna into a passionate kiss, leaving her wide-eyed and breathless in total shock. Kazuma pulls away from Yuna, calmly stating that she can now say she has kissed someone and that it is no longer a lie. While Yuna remains stunned, Rua is frozen in absolute shock, her expression one of total disbelief as she realizes the magnitude of Kazuma's move. As Kazuma declares that the kiss has turned Yuna's lie into a truth, Rua's shock transforms into pure, unadulterated fury. With a manic expression and wide eyes, she turns to Rai and coldly orders her to kill the girl. With a cold and emotionless gaze, Hinokamiri simply replies, understood. In a blur of speed, she vanishes and reappears instantly in front of Yuna, leaving the Yuna frozen in absolute terror as Rei prepares to strike. In a sudden blur of motion, Suzuki Kazuma intercepts the attack, delivering a devastating kick that sends Hinokami Rei crashing backward. Yuna, completely bewildered by the violent turn of events, can only stare in shock, wondering what is happening. With a smug and confident expression, Suzuki Kazuma looks down on Hinokami Rei, challenging the newbie and promising to show her the power of a real elite. But before the clash can continue, Rua shouts for Rei to stop wasting time with Kazuma and instead target Yuna. Rei silently nods in agreement, preparing herself for another strike. Obeying Rua's command, Hinokami Rei leaps air with blinding speed, targeting Yuna. Terrified and unable to move, Yuna can only gasp in shock as the attack closes in. Meanwhile, Kazuma keeps a sharp eye on the situation, his expression grim and focused. Just as Hinokami Rei lunges toward Yuna, Suzuki Kazuma catches her leg midair, leaving her stunned and completely inverted. Noticing a concealed blade hidden on her boot, Kazuma calmly observes the weapon and decides that such a dangerous object must be removed. Suzuki Kazuma maintains a calm, almost amused expression as he continues to hold Hinokami Rei's leg. Completely disoriented and hanging upside down, Rei stares at him in disbelief, unable to understand why he is laughing in such a tense situation. Suzuki Kazuma successfully removes the dangerous blade from Hinokami Rei's boot. As Rei lies defeated on the floor, Kazuma muses that fighting is the only freedom allowed to those treated like machines, admitting that facing a strong opponent is a true joy. After neutralizing her, Suzuki Kazuma looks at Hinokami Rei and asks why she doesn't simply sever her ties with the Takayashiki family. Confused by the concept, Rei can barely process the word. Kazuma encourages her to be free and suggests that she could even get a part-time job, just as he did, presenting it as a viable option for her life. Suzuki Kazuma adds a playful jab, suggesting that the maid outfit of the cafe might surprisingly suit Hinokami Rei. Rei is left speechless, her eyes wide with utter shock at his audacity. Hinokami Rei remains frozen, staring intensely at Suzuki Kazuma with wide, vacant eyes. The sheer intensity of her gaze is so overwhelming that it's noticed by Yuna, who finds the staring unsettling. After staring in silence, Hinokami finally speaks, calling out to Suzuki Kazuma. She looks at him with genuine curiosity, wondering who he really is. Rua Takayashiki snaps, shouting at Hinokami Rei for becoming too friendly and defying her authority. She furiously orders Rei to stop hesitating and kill the target, but Rei simply responds with a cold, indifferent hemp. Suzuki Kazuma sighs, realizing that the situation has become inevitable. As he faces Hinokami Rei, he recalls the long and painful struggle it took for him to finally break free from Rua Takayashiki's oppressive influence. Suddenly, Takayashiki Sakura arrives on the scene, putting a stop to the chaos by declaring that enough is enough. Suzuki Kazuma is stunned to see her, calling out to her as master, while Sakura greets him with a playful giggle, remarking that it has been a long time since they last saw each other. A tall figure in black bows and apologizes, stating that their princess has caused trouble. This leaves Hinokami Rei bewildered by the sudden appearance of another new character. Rua Takayashiki, however, is completely outraged, shouting at Sakura and insisting that the fault lies elsewhere. Takashiki. Sakura looks at Rua with a smug, knowing smile, questioning the severity of her demand to kill. She points out the contradictions in Rua's actions, reminding her that she claimed her motives were for protection. Sakura then delivers a stern warning, asking Rua what she thinks would happen if their grandfather discovered she used the Takashiki name and to target a... Rua is completely thrown off balance, her confidence vanishing as she stammers, unable to find a proper excuse. Takayashiki Sakura offers a deal to keep Rua's behavior a secret from their grandfather, provided she apologizes to her friend and leaves. Rua initially protests, questioning why she should apologize, but under Sakura's firm grip and pressure, she reluctantly agrees. With a frustrated and embarrassed expression, returns to Aayacha and admits that saying kill was indeed over the line, offering a reluctant apology. Watching the scene unfold, Kazuma is stunned, thinking to himself that this is the first time he has ever seen her apologize. As Yuna breaks down and apologizes for lying, Suzuki Kazuma watches, wondering if Rua is actually starting to reflect on her actions. But the brief moment of calm is shattered when Rua suddenly explodes in rage. Pointing an accusing finger at Yuna, she screams that Yuna is the one who is wrong, and declares that getting close to her cause is an unforgivable offense, calling her an ugly fake witch. Suzuki Kazuma stares blankly with a look of disappointment, mentally retracting his hope that Rua was actually reflecting on her actions. In the background, Takayashiki Sakura calls out to Rua, attempting to intervene. With Rua finally being led out of the room, a heavy silence falls. Takayashiki Sakura turns to Suzuki Expression, asking him if he has any intention of returning to the Takayashiki family. Suzuki Kazuma closes his eyes and gives a firm no to Sakura's question. With a solemn expression, he adds an apology, regretting that he never got to say a proper goodbye to his master. Takayashiki Sakura looks on with a slight understanding smile, calmly accepting Kazuma's answer. Takayashiki Sakura warns Suzuki Kazuma that the most powerful man in the country is determined to make him Rua's husband, cautioning him that it will be a tough struggle. However, Kazuma remains unfazed, stating that he severed ties with the family with that full understanding because he simply wants to live a normal life. Takayashiki Sakura bursts into laughter, amused by Suzuki Kazuma's wish to live a normal life. She admits she expected things to turn out this way, observing that Kazuma doesn't seem like the type of person who could be owned by anyone. With a final smile, she tells him it is time for them to truly take their leave. As she prepares to leave, Takayashiki Sakura gives Suzuki Kazuma a cryptic warning, suggesting that their next encounter might be as enemies. However, she lightens the mood by mentioning she would like to visit again as a customer. Kazuma accepts this with a smile, promising his former master special service and jokingly telling her he will go easy on her. With a playful chuckle, Takayashiki Sakura calls Kazuma her beloved disciple one last time before waving goodbye. As she leaves alongside Rua and Tali, the door closes, ending their meeting. Aayacha Hiragi stands frozen with a blank expression, completely spaced out. Someone tries to get her attention, calling her name repeatedly, but she remains lost in her own thoughts. Suzuki Kazuma approaches Aayacha Hiragi to check if she is all right. Though she insists she is fine, she is clearly overwhelmed, struggling to process the intensity of the situation. She describes the feeling as if she were in a video game battle, admitting that she felt like she was almost killed. Looking at Aayacha with a serious and apologetic expression, Suzuki Kazuma softly says, "Sorry for dragging you into this mess." Aayacha reflects on the chaos, admitting that she was the one who made Rua angry and recalling a moment where she lied, which led to an unexpected kiss with Kazuma. Suddenly blushing and overwhelmed by emotion, she slams her head down in a deep bow to thank Kazuma for protecting her, leaving him completely bewildered. Still feeling overwhelmed, Aayacha looks at Suzuki with a confused and curious expression. She nervously grips her dress, wondering aloud why he is being so nice to her despite everything. Looking down with a troubled expression, Aayacha Hiragi honestly admits that she doesn't feel she even deserves to be friends with Suzuki Kazuma. Suzuki Kazuma looks on calmly, gently asking Aayacha if there are really any qualifications needed to be friends. Suzuki Kazuma admits that since he never had friends, he doesn't know what is considered normal. But he believes his respect for Aayacha Hiragi is reason enough to be friends. Aayacha is touched but still feels the need to make amends. Seeing how earnest she is, Kazuma decides to ask her for a favor. Suzuki Kazuma reveals the favor he wanted. He asks Aayacha Hiragi to go clothes shopping with him. He admits that he once tried to dress up for karaoke but was laughed at, leaving him unsure of what normal fashion looks like. He earnestly asks for her help to look both normal and stylish, leaving Aayacha visibly touched by his request. Aayacha Hiragi reacts with overwhelming excitement, hugging Suzuki Kazuma and promising to make him the coolest person in the world when they go to the mall. Kazuma, however, insists that he just wants to look normal. As they stand together in the café, Kazuma softly calls her name, catching her attention. With a blushing and earnest expression, Aayacha Hiragi asks Suzuki Kazuma to call her Aayacha, and asks if it's okay for her to call him Kazuma as well. Suzuki Kazuma calmly accepts her request, calling her Aayacha. The sudden intimacy leaves Aayacha completely flustered, her heart racing. In a moment of hesitation, she tentatively tries to bring up the kiss they shared earlier. Suzuki Kazuma apologizes for kissing Aayacha Hiragi without asking, wondering if she is angry. Blushing deeply, Aayacha admits that it was her first kiss and tells him that she would like to do it again, but in a more romantic way. Kazuma simply responds with a firm "got it," pulling her closer. True to his word, Kazuma leans in and kisses Aayacha once more, gently cupping her face as they share a romantic and intimate moment. Suzuki Kazuma and Aayacha Hiragi share a deep, romantic kiss. As they slowly pull apart, Aayacha is left breathless and blushing intensely. Overwhelmed with emotion, she softly thanks him and whispers his name. The scene transitions to the school building, with a light-hearted note mentioning that, sadly, there is no battle this time. The scene focuses on the sign for Class 11 as a wave of shock hits the students. Thea looks on in disbelief, exclaiming that Hiragi is changing classes, while Noah and another classmate react with equal confusion and surprise. Rua calmly mentions that a lot has happened, while teasing Aayacha about the requirement to retake the special student exam. Theo and Noah are shocked by the revelation, with a mischievous smile. Rua further pressures Aayacha, pointing out that failure would lead to her being demoted to a regular student, and questioning if she can even afford the tuition, leaving Aayacha feeling defeated. Aayacha Hiragi puts on a confident smile, declaring that she will be fine and will clear the retest easily. This unexpected response leaves Rua Takayashiki completely shocked. Nearby, Suzuki Kazuma, Noah, Theo, and Hana watch the exchange, wondering why it feels like the two girls are at each other's throats. Rua's attention is suddenly diverted as she spots someone entering the room. "Ah, Honda-san!" she exclaims, noticing Hana standing hesitantly by the door. Rua apologizes for the suddenness of the situation. Hana, looking confused and flustered, asks if something is happening and mentions Hiragi-san. Hana hesitates, her expression earnest and nervous as she looks at Rua. She reveals that today is her final day in the class, and that there is something she has been wanting to tell her properly. Aayacha bows deeply, apologizing to Hana for taking her seat without asking and causing trouble. Surprised, Hana recalls the incident, but quickly waves it off with a smile, telling Aayacha that it is perfectly fine and not to worry about it. Touched by Hana's kindness, Aayacha Hiragi remains silent for a moment before softly thanking her. Rua Takayashiki continues her conversation with Hana. Reflecting on her past behavior, she admits that she had become full of herself simply because of her status as a special student, even though she now realizes it didn't truly mean anything. Nearby, Suzuki Kazuma leans against the door, quietly listening to her confession. Rua continues to open up to Hana, reflecting on her past arrogance. She admits that she has finally realized that some amazing people have no title or status, and conversely, having one doesn't make someone amazing. Kazuma watches her from the side, listening to her rare moment of vulnerability. Rua is completely taken aback by the scene. She shouts in disbelief, questioning why Aayacha Hiragi is suddenly acting like a good girl after lying to everyone for so long. Rua leans in close to Hana, her gaze sharp and confrontational. Hana shrinks back, visibly shaken by Rua's sudden and overwhelming intensity. Rua wears a playful, cunning smile as she contemplates whether to expose Ayacha's secret to everyone. She questions the other students, including Kazuma, Lina, and Theo, expressing genuine shock that they are oblivious to the truth. With a sharp gaze and a firm step forward, Rua prepares to stir up more trouble. Suzuki Kazuma steps in with a stern expression, telling Rua that enough is enough. He reminds her that Sakura-san specifically warned her not to lay hands on Hiragi. Rua, surprised and excited to see him, calls out to him and cheekily retorts that she isn't using her hands, but her mouth to tell the truth. Rua Takayashiki looks at Suzuki Kazuma and thanks him. Though she insists she is fine now, she tells him that she wants to express herself properly using her own words. Suddenly, as someone calls out to the class, Kazuma turns his attention toward Aayacha Hiragi with a puzzled look. Aayacha Hiragi stands before her classmates, her expression filled with regret. She admits that she has been pretending this whole time, lying to everyone just to look good. With a deep bow, she reveals the truth. Her family is poor. She works numerous part-time jobs, and she doesn't even have a college boyfriend. Overcome with guilt, she sincerely apologizes to everyone for her deception, while Suzuki Kazuma looks on. With tears streaming down her face, Aayacha reveals the truth behind her facade, admitting she was terrified of Rua's overwhelming popularity and power. She confesses that she spent her time desperately trying to stay on Rua's good side just to fit in. As her Ari look on with screens, Aayacha firmly declares that she is done living her life in fear and deception. Aayacha doesn't stop at her confession. She turns her gaze toward Rua, bluntly stating that Rua has been spoiled far too much, which led to her arrogance. She declares her intention to treat Rua as just another ordinary person, same as herself. This sudden outburst leaves Rua stunned and the rest of the class, including Kazuma, in complete shock. Aayacha leans in and points her finger, asserting that Rua needs a friend and that she can finally be honest with someone like her. Rua is left completely shocked, her eyes wide in disbelief at Ayacha's sudden transformation. Rua reacts with disbelief and coldness, telling Aayacha that she doesn't need a friend. Undeterred, Aayacha cheerfully insists that she will be her friend anyway. Observing the interaction, Kazuma is moved by Ayacha's spirit, thinking that she is truly amazing and kind for remaining so earnest even after everything Rua has put her through. Aayacha turns her attention toward Kazuma, boldly declaring that she isn't giving up on him. Both Rua and Kazuma are caught completely off guard by her sudden proclamation, staring at her in utter confusion. Rua Takayashiki declares that even if they are friends, they are now rivals. Aayacha Hiragi then turns to Suzuki Kazuma with a playful yet warning tone, telling him he had better brace himself as well, leaving Kazuma completely bewildered. Aayacha leans in close to Kazuma, her face just inches from his, as she boldly declares that she won't lose to Rua or Amana-chan. The surrounding Ari are completely stunned by the scene, unable to believe that Kazuma is attracting so much attention from popular girls. They wonder aloud just who Suzuki really is and why he has suddenly become so popular. Rua Takayashiki snaps, her expression twisting into one of pure rage as she threatens to kill Aayacha Hiragi for her audacity. The scene shifts to the Takayashiki estate under a starry night sky. Takayashiki Sakura, dressed in a kimono, calmly lectures Hinokami Rei, reminding her that killing is strictly forbidden. Sakura warns her that while she kept quiet about previous incidents, any further trouble will be reported, and she further forbids the use of Rei. Rei can only stutter in frustration, unable to argue back. Rua vents her frustration, complaining that weird girls swarm Suzuki Kazuma whenever she isn't around, with one even kissing him on the cheek. Takayashiki Sakura playfully suggests that Rua should try making the first move herself. Though initially shocked and claiming it's impossible, Rua eventually blushes and admits that if Kazuma really wanted to kiss her, she might actually do it. Takayashiki Sakura smiles calmly with her eyes closed, holding her fan as she tells Rua that instead of pushing other people down, she should consider a different approach. Sakura continues her advice, suggesting that if Rua does things Kazuma actually likes, he won't even look at anyone else. Rua listens with a look of pure shock on her face. Rua remains silent, her mind racing as she repeats Sakura's words to herself. Something hid-like. Noticing her distant and stunned expression, Sakura calls out to her, wondering if she is still there. Rua suddenly snaps out of her thoughts with a look of determination, exclaiming that she's found the answer. She quickly thanks Sakura and rushes away, declaring that she needs to talk to her grandfather immediately. As Rua disappears, Sakura watches her with a bewildered expression, wondering if Rua is actually going to be okay, while a caption confirms that she absolutely is not. The next morning, Rua Takayashiki arrives at the student council room, receiving enthusiastic greetings from the other members. After a brief response, she settles into her seat and immediately begins handling school business. Starting with a budget proposal brought by Hayashi-san, Rua immediately takes control of the room, showing no mercy for inefficiency. She shuts down Kojima's excuse about a deadline, reminding him that the work was due days ago, and swiftly lists multiple financial errors in the club budgets. Her subordinates can only nod in submission to her overwhelming competence. In the student council room, a student named Morikun offers to make tea for Rua Takayashiki, which she accepts. Meanwhile, Kojima apologizes and goes to check the errors she pointed out. Before Morikun can leave to make tea, Rua gives him an urgent assignment to deliver documents to the vice principal in the academic affairs section to ensure they are processed immediately. The members of the student council look on with absolute admiration. To them, Rua Takayashiki is the perfect leader, and her flawless handling of the morning's duties only reinforces her legendary status as the president of Teikai Academy. The admiration for Rua Takayashiki continues as members of her fan club praise her for being a superhuman who manages both the student council and her own company while maintaining top grades. As they begin to speculate whether anyone could possibly be a match for her in romance, Rua suddenly appears behind them, catching the group completely off guard. The fan club members panic and apologize, as Rua calmly asks them to move so she can head to the student council room. Once she slides the door open, she mutters to herself about how annoying they are before cheerfully calling out to see if the student council president is inside. As Rua enters the room, she is suddenly greeted by a light-haired girl with a mischievous smile. The girl remarks that it has been a long time and notes how rare it is to see Rua in this place. Kiratu excitedly reveals to Rua Takayashiki that she has come up with a new school rule. When a surprised Rua questions her, Kiratu proudly presents the document, explaining that she already has the chairman's approval and only needs Rua to process the paperwork. Rua Takayashiki stares at the paperwork, her eyes widening in shock as she reads the contents of the new rule. Kiratu cheerfully informs everyone that the announcement to the students will take place at tomorrow's school assembly. With a wave and a bright smile, she bids them farewell and leaves. As she departs, a heavy silence falls over the student council room. Rua Takayashiki sighs deeply, clutching her forehead in distress as she feels a headache coming on. The next morning arrives, and it is time for the school assembly. Takayashiki Taizo looks on with a stern and imposing expression. Standing before the assembled students, Takayashiki Taizo speaks into the microphone with a cold intensity, declaring that this world is harsh. Takayashiki Taizo continues his stern lecture to the assembled students, declaring that those with power are rewarded, while those without are not. He describes the world as a place of survival of the fittest, where the strong triumph over the weak, calling this the harsh truth of society. With a sharp and commanding gaze, Takayashiki Taizo declares that he doesn't want the students to become losers. Takayashiki Tito continues his stern address to the assembled students, asserting that for the sake of Japan, he aims to nurture winners. He declares that this goal is not only his own mission, but the very mission of the academy. While the students listen, Takayashiki Taizo declares that in order to encourage everyone to strive even harder, he will announce a new system for Teikai Academy. Suzuki Kazuma looks on, his expression grim. Takayashiki Taizo reveals the name of the new initiative, the badge system. He explains that gold badges will be awarded to the top scholarship students who reign supreme in the school, while regular students will be assigned silver badges. Takayashiki Taizo continues his address, stating that for a more detailed explanation, he will let the student council officer who proposed the system take over. As he announces that Rua Takayashiki will be the one to explain, the students murmur among themselves, and Suzuki Kazuma reacts with a look of pure shock. Rua Takayashiki steps forward with a bright smile, momentarily slipping up by calling the chairman her grandfather before correcting herself. She introduces herself to the students and explains that special gold badges will be distributed to scholarship students, proudly pointing to the one she is wearing. From the podium, Rua continues her speech, asserting that the gold badges will give scholarship students a sense of pride and responsibility, motivating them to strive for even greater success. Holding up a silver badge, Rua cheerfully explains that regular students will wear silver, but she encourages everyone to strive for gold. She reminds them that it is possible to become a scholarship student midway through their time at Teikai Academy, if they work hard in their studies and club activities. The students in the crowd are captivated by Rua's presence, with some praising her cuteness, while others feel inspired to strive for the gold badge. Unlike his classmates who are swept up in Rua's charisma, Suzuki Kazuma looks on with a serious and troubled expression, concluding that this new system is a problem. Rua continues her speech, stating that scholarship students with gold badges are important individuals contributing to the school. With a bright smile, she concludes her explanation and prepares to make a final request from the student council to all the students. With a bright and cheerful smile, Rua Takayashiki delivers her final request to the assembly, urging all students to show respect to those wearing the gold badges. Rua Takayashiki brings her speech to an end, thanking the students as the hall fills with the sound of clapping. With her announcement officially concluded, Rua Takayashiki turns and walks away from the stage. In the crowd, Suzuki Kazuma keeps his gaze fixed on her, his expression remaining solemn as he processes the implications of the new system. As she steps away from the podium, Rua Takayashiki lets out a small sigh of relief, a faint blush on her cheeks as she feels satisfied with her performance. The students erupt in excitement, loudly arguing over who Rua winked at. Amidst the chaos, Suzuki Kazuma shudders in disgust, finding the noise overwhelming and feeling physically sickened by the scene. Unable to stand the noise and the frenzy any longer, Kazuma decides to leave the scene and head to the infirmary. Suzuki Kazuma makes his way to the infirmary, pondering how announcements about new policies are typically the responsibility of the student council president. He finds it hard to believe that someone as wise as President Kocho would agree to such a system. After knocking and sliding the door open, Kazuma is suddenly struck by a look of shock. Upon entering the infirmary, Suzuki Kazuma is shocked to find President Kocho in a state of undress. Completely flustered, he stammers an apology and attempts to leave the room immediately, but she quickly tells him to wait. President Kocho tells Suzuki Kazuma to come inside and close the door, but warns him to face the other way. Flustered and obedient, Kazuma quickly agrees. President Kocho recognizes Suzuki Kazuma, identifying him as a student from Class 1A. Surprised, Kazuma asks how she knows who he is, to which she calmly replies that she knows the names and classes of every student in the school. President Kocho informs Suzuki Kazuma that it is now fine for him to turn around as he does. Kazuma reflects on the fact that there are over 1,000 students at Teikai, thinking to himself that such diligence is exactly what he would expect from the perfect President Kocho. Suzuki Kazuma attempts to apologize for walking in on her, but President Kocho tells him it was her fault for forgetting to lock the door. However, she admits that being seen in her underwear by a man before marriage is the biggest failure of her life. Because of this, she tells him she cannot let him leave just like that and asks him to make a choice, leaving Kazuma completely bewildered. President Kocho presents Suzuki Kazuma with two extreme options to resolve the embarrassment of the accident. She tells him that he must either drop out of school or get engaged to her. Suzuki Kazuma stands frozen in shock, his mind racing as he tries to process the absurd ultimatum. He internally admits that dropping out of school is simply not an option for him. Noticing his reaction, President Kocho calmly concludes the matter, declaring that since dropping out is a problem, the only remaining choice is their engagement. With a serene and confident expression, President Kocho formally welcomes Suzuki Kazuma into their unexpected engagement. Kazuma, however, can only gasp in utter disbelief, completely overwhelmed by the sudden and absurd turn of events. Kazuma stares at President Kocho in disbelief. He had always heard that she was a cool and perfect genius, but seeing her make such an outrageous claim with a completely straight face makes him realize that talking to her in person feels entirely different. President Kocho asks Suzuki Kazuma if he is feeling unwell since he came to the infirmary. Kazuma admits he is feeling a bit off, but internally realizes this is the perfect timing. He then tells President Kocho that there is something he wants to ask her, leaving her curious and surprised. Kazuma brings up the badge system that was announced during the school assembly. President Kocho is surprised by the question and explains that the system was proposed by Rua Takayashiki and that she merely approved it in her capacity as the student council president. Kazuma then asks her what she personally thinks about the system. Suzuki Kazuma looks at President Kocho with a serious expression, clarifying that he wants to know if she is personally for or against the badge system. Caught off guard by the direct question, President Kocho struggles to find an immediate answer. President Kocho reflects on the difficulty of the situation, noting that forcing an unwanted rule on students must be an unpleasant task. She then concludes that it makes sense why Suzuki Kazuma is in the infirmary, leaving him surprised by her observation. President Kocho is taken aback by Suzuki Kazuma's intensity, admitting that he is unexpectedly scary. Feeling overwhelmed, she abruptly decides to end the conversation and tells him she will go get the doctor, using his poor health as a reason to leave. Left alone in the infirmary, Kazuma thinks back to the president's reaction. He realizes that she likely opposes the system, but simply cannot show it, because opposing the chairman's granddaughter is useless. He concludes that the badge system is entirely Rua's unilateral decision. The scene shifts to a view of the school building and the vast sky, mirroring Kazuma's lingering uncertainty as he questions what Rua could possibly be plotting. Returning to Class 11, Kazuma is immediately intercepted by a cheerful Rua Takayashiki. She excitedly asks him what he thought of her presentation at the school assembly, while Kazuma can only respond with a blank, exhausted expression. Rua cheerfully tells Kazuma that she thought the badge system he came up with was a horrible idea that should have been scrapped immediately. With a mischievous smile, she claims she finally understands everything, questioning why he continues to push her away, leaving Kazuma completely bewildered. Rua confidently asserts that Kazuma's motivations were driven by a desire to shine and be liked by everyone. She believes he grew tired of hiding in her shadow and feared that her brilliance would bury his own, asking him if she finally hit the mark. Rua Takayashiki looks down with a regretful expression, apologizing for her lack of understanding. Despite their years as childhood friends, Suzuki Kazuma, however, is left completely baffled by her sudden and misguided conclusion. Rua beams with confidence as she drops a bombshell on Suzuki Kazuma. She reveals that she discussed the matter with Sakura and her grandfather, claiming that she was the true creator of the badge system, leaving Kazuma absolutely stunned. Rua Takayashiki presents a gold badge to Suzuki Kazuma, explaining that it is meant for scholarship students. With a playful and affectionate smile, she offers him one, telling him that he can now join the upper ranks as well. Without a word, Kazuma simply opens his hand, letting the gold badge slip and clatter onto the classroom floor. Rua looks on in shock, but Kazuma's expression remains cold and dead-eyed, showing his absolute refusal to be pulled back into her world. Rua is left in complete shock and disbelief, shouting at Kazuma for his sudden rejection. However, Kazuma remains cold and indifferent, staring back at her with a determined gaze. He makes it clear that he doesn't want the privilege joining the upper ranks or the badge she offered, declaring that all he truly wants is a normal life. Rua is completely blindsided by Kazuma's cold rejection, outraged that she actually humbled herself to offer him a place in the upper ranks. She declares that if he's going to be like this, she won't give him a gold or silver badge, threatening to leave him as the only person in the entire school with no badge at all. Unfazed by Rua's anger and her threat to leave him without a badge, Suzuki Kazuma calmly tells her to do whatever she wants. Rua, still fuming, points at him and snaps back that it is fine by her. Frustrated by his lack of reaction, Rua shouts that Kazuma is an idiot and completely impossible, but she quickly falls silent, stunned by his coldness. As the scene shifts to the sky, Rua's voice echoes with a final warning, telling Kazuma not to come crying to her when he eventually regrets his choice. 2 weeks later, the school routine continues, but the atmosphere has shifted. While eating her lunch, Noa notes that things have started to feel kind of strange lately. Suzuki Kazuma asks Noa if she has noticed the same strange atmosphere. Noa agrees, explaining that the special treatment for those wearing gold badges has become far too obvious, as other students give up their seats for them and teachers overlook their behavior in class. In the quiet of the library, Kazuma asks Noa if she has ever heard of the prison experiment. He expresses his fear that the school's badge system is creating a similar, dangerous social dynamic. As a confused Noa asks for clarification, Kazuma describes a psychology experiment from an overseas university where 20 people were divided into guards and prisoners within a mock prison. Suzuki Kazuma continues his explanation, illustrating how the guards in the experiment grew increasingly arrogant and eventually violent, while the prisoners became completely submissive. He explains that the experiment had to be stopped because it became too dangerous, though the guards were reluctant to end it, having become addicted to the thrill of power. Noa listens with a shocked expression, finding the entire situation awful. Noa asks with worry if Kazuma believes the school could end up like the prison experiment. Kazuma admits that while it might not go that far, the situation feels similar. He reflects on the inherent divide between scholarship students and regular students, those who rule and those who are ruled, noting that the badge system has made this social hierarchy far more visible. Suzuki Kazuma continues his explanation, revealing that years later, it was discovered that the professor acting as the prison warden had actually instructed the guards to be brutal. He looks at Noa and concludes that without such arbitrary pressure from above, things usually wouldn't escalate to that level of cruelty. Noa expresses relief, comforted by the idea that the brutality in the experiment was orchestrated. However, Kazuma remains skeptical, reflecting that if those in power give the order, the students acting as guards in their school could still become just as cruel. Seeing Noa's innocent smile, he decides to stop sharing his dark theories to avoid scaring her any further. Suzuki Kazuma suddenly remembers something and points out that Noa isn't wearing a badge either. Surprised by the observation, Noa begins to wonder if she is the only one in the school who doesn't have one. Suzuki Kazuma tries to reassure Noa, but she interrupts him with a sheepish smile. She explains that there was some kind of mix-up with the vendor, and because of that, she never actually received her badge. Kazuma is caught off guard by the simple explanation. Noa quickly tries to reassure Kazuma that the missing badge is no big deal. However, Kazuma's mind immediately jumps to Rua, imagining her calling him a pig and wondering if this is her way of getting back at him for refusing the badge. Despite his internal resolve not to wear one even if he had it, he feels guilty and apologizes to Noa, leaving her completely confused. Noa smiles warmly, explaining to Kazuma that she doesn't mind the badge mix-ups is because she's always been alone and doesn't care if others look at her funny. She softly admits that she wants to match with him, leaving Kazuma completely shocked by her sincerity. Noa looks at Kazuma with a tender expression, explaining that the time they spend together means much more to her than anything else. She reflects on how he found her and saved her from the darkness of her isolation. With sparkling eyes and a heartfelt smile, she softly confesses that she is truly happy right now. Moved by Noah's heartfelt words, Kazuma leans in, his face just inches from hers. He softly whispers Unanswered, as the atmosphere between them becomes thick with romantic tension. As the moment between them reaches a peak, a loud ping from a phone startles them both, breaking the romantic tension. Flustered, Noah quickly apologizes for the interruption. When Kazuma asks if it's a work-related message, Noah hesitantly checks her screen and explains that it's from someone in the baseball club, leaving Kazuma curious about the sender. Noah explains that she was forced to give her contact information to someone from the baseball club. As she tries to recall the person's identity, she struggles to remember if it was Asa-san or Asanuma-san. Noah looks at the message on her phone, where the boy asks to meet her after school in her classroom to talk about something important. She reads the text and wonders what it could possibly be about. Looking at the message, Kazuma realizes the sender is likely Asano from the baseball club. He suspects that Asano likes Noah and might be planning to confess his feelings to her, while Noah looks on hesitantly. Blushing and looking hopeful, Noah asks Kazuma if he would be willing to walk home with her once she's done dealing with the guy from the baseball club. Noting that she happens to be off work today, Suzuki Kazuma agrees to Noah's request, adding that he is also off from his part-time job, so they can take their time walking home together. Overjoyed by his response, Noah beams with happiness and suggests they meet at 4 p.m. Suzuki Kazuma stands outside the school, glancing up the clock tower and checking his phone. It is now 4:10. 10 minutes past the time, he and Noah agreed to meet. He waits alone, thinking to himself that it is quite unusual for her to be late. 10 minutes might not seem like a long time, but for Noah, it is completely out of character. She always believed that being late damaged one's credibility, and in all their time together, she had never once been late to meet him. Suzuki Kazuma continues to wait, his expression clouded with doubt. He considers that perhaps the confession is just dragging on, but the unusual delay still bothers him. Still uneasy about Noah's delay, Suzuki Kazuma sends her an email. As the confirmation message appears on his screen, he tells himself that he should prepare for the worst. The silent school building looms overhead, mirroring the growing anxiety as Suzuki Kazuma waits for any sign of Noah. Inside the quiet school hallway, the silence is suddenly broken by a mysterious voice calling out, "Stop!" Noah attempts to leave the classroom, announcing that she is going home, but she is immediately stopped by a group of Ari, who insist that their conversation is not yet finished. The Ari grow more insistent, telling Noah to stop being stubborn and simply obey. One of them suggests that the arrangement isn't a bad deal for her, addressing her as a Manishin. As they close in on her, Noah's resistance weakens, and in her desperation, she silently pleads for Kazuma to save her. The scene shifts to the student council room. President Kocho is seen meticulously verifying the room's security, checking the lock and the curtains one by one. After ensuring everything is secure, she lets out a sigh of relief, reminding herself that she must never make the same blunder again. Just as President Kocho finishes securing the room, a sudden ping echoes from her laptop, catching her attention. President Kocho looks at her screen and discovers an email addressed to the student council. She is completely taken aback, her eyes widening in sheer surprise at the notification. President Kochu stares at her laptop screen with a perplexed expression. She mutters Suzuki Kazuma's name to herself, wondering honestly what exactly he is trying to achieve.